Throws in the flat. Pass is complete to Clayton. First down and then some. Goodbye, Mark Clayton. To the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Incredible.
This is 365 Sports.
Motion by Oliver. Lucky will go the other way on the option. Pulls it down. Touchdown, Aggies.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
McNabb, straight back. Left side, he's all alone. It's a touchdown. Conrad. A defensive breakdown, and Conrad was all alone. He goes into the end zone for the second touchdown. Nobody was over there.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Maurice Claret is the tailback, or the single back. He's got it. He's got a touchdown.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Hello, end zone. Won't catch it. LaMichael James, and ladies and gentlemen, right now, this young man is a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Thursday afternoon. Hope you've had a really, really good day. We are full throttle in the studio today with Craig and Paul. I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports. Emery back from watching and rooting for the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA playoffs. Garrett Ross and Andrew Valade also here running the mothership. I missed a pretty good day yesterday with the Ross Dellinger story about, I don't know, maybe some pushing or maybe blowback or feedback or trying to maybe with a possible turf war from those who aren't the Big Ten and SEC if they have enough power together to do something. And then we have a couple of nuggets from today as well. But it's almost as if there's so much going on, and yet nothing is official, Craig and Paul, that is it now where even if you have a sliver of any type of voice, that people are starting to maybe become more vocal. For example, here's the quote from Michael Cross, who's the commissioner of the Southern Conference. Now, the Southern Conference, God bless him. This is it. Interesting and outspoken feedback from Michael Cross on the 300 member institutions and conferences outside of the Autonomy. Four deserve a model that respects their views, provides regulatory freedom as the nationally governed areas across all 32 conferences become narrower. Subtext, if the power conferences are taking more control, they need to assume proportional risk and financial liability when the next round of lawsuits happens, unlike the house payment and the distribution that everybody equally, which I never thought was fair. I get why, but they all equally, no matter if you're Troy or you're Georgia, you all are paying into the pie the same.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's voicing what all the conference commissioners at his level are saying is like, okay, look, if you guys want to run things, we're fine letting you run them because we think that probably needs to be the case. But also, being able to, shove some of the bill into our laps when we're not the ones who are costing this money is also very unfair. So they need to have way more of the financial risk when it comes to, because they have way more of the money because, the schools that are going to suffer the most if there's another wave of lawsuits and there's another massive one are the ones who, like them, like, oh, I've got to pay out $25 million too out of my budget. Well, that's our whole budget for 2 years, maybe in some places, as opposed to 25 million. Like, okay, well, all right, well, that's a blip on the radar for a school like Georgia. So, yeah, I feel the same way that he does, and I'm not even on this, that, yeah, the little guys should pay less than the big guys when it comes to these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like all that shocking that a guy who is standing to not benefit from all this and has really no say in anything is wanting to say something about it before it gets too far down the tracks. I mean, that's what I would do too if I was Michael Cross or anybody else who's not in the power conferences. I mean, you got to speak up and fight for yourself, and they tried to do that last year, and they still ended up paying the same as everybody else in the House settlement, or percentage-wise, a lot more of what they the imbalance, I think, when pointing to how much money other schools are making compared to them, and yet they're all paying the same amount. That didn't really add up. And I know there was at one point in time somebody with a table somewhere on some social media site trying to explain why, no, like actually Holy Cross does have to pay the same as Alabama. And I didn't really understand it at that time, and I don't really understand it now. But it does seem unfair on the surface. I know there's somebody that will rush to the Big Ten's defense and be like, well, if it wasn't for Michigan's TV ratings, then you wouldn't even exist or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, if there's a time to speak up, it's now. And I don't know what difference it makes, but it's better than, it's going out on your shield and just sitting there and taking it and not fighting for yourself and trying to at least hope that somebody hears what you have to say and maybe it changes something for the better. But, yeah, I would hate to be smaller schools right now. I feel like you're in a car that's out of control, but there's not even a steering wheel to grab onto, and you're just at the mercy of a bunch of people who I don't think necessarily have your best interest in mind. So, yeah, they need to fight for themselves. But, again, I don't know what difference it makes, but you do need to say something.
Yeah, I saw a response from one of the posts of this particular post. One of them was just split D1 already. I know that's out there. Another one was, if they're so powerful, the Big Ten and SEC, why do they continue to want more but pay like a smaller school the same amount? And then one was, F them. Who pays the bills? And that was like for not anybody particular.
That's the guy who's team Walmart over mom and pop too.
Yeah,
Like that's what I see a lot of is like, yay, corporations, yay. Like I feel like I get that vibe from a lot of football fans when it comes to some of these opinions. And that's definitely a dude who's like team Walmart. Let's put the mom and pops out of business. They're getting in the way.
Yeah. And probably wearing a jersey he bought from Walmart of his favorite football team.
Possibly.
Too.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys had a lot of discussion yesterday when the Ross Dellinger, the fight over college football playoff future, getting messy amid SEC Big Ten power play. No one likes it. That was one of the quotes. Ross is going to join us today. Great to have him on today. He'll join us at 4 o'clock today. Sam Comm will join us today at 3:30. And by the way, Max will be back with us, Max Olson, with us next week. We'll also have Dan Wetzel, Tim Brando, and others lined up. Do you see anything different, or is this just everyone, it finally feels like, again, they themselves, the smaller conferences or schools, we have nothing to lose. Even what are they going to do? Like push my forehead down in the sand? Why not say something? You just mentioned that. What do they have to lose? Why not more speaking out against this?
Because maybe when they have absolutely nothing to say next year, then you get no automatic qualifiers, and you are lucky to even be a part of our little tournament that we have here. That's what you have to lose. That's what the whole gamble is. So the entire gamble, if you're Brett Yormark and you're Jim Phillips, is how much do you fight back? So the whole conversation is how much do you fight back at this point? And I do think if you're them, you've been told, well, in no uncertain terms, like do this or else in a couple years, and now it's only a year away, but it was like 3 years from now, we'll remember this. It's kind of always the warning in Dellinger's articles or in other people's articles about this of like, it's uncertain. The Big 12 and ACC are pushing back, but in 2 years, the SEC and Big 10 will be able to set all the rules. So there'll be some sort of like retribution if you were to foil their plans. And at this point, like, I don't know, man. I'm not getting paid to make these decisions. So if I was, I would probably have a much more well thought out and well formed opinion on what to do. But I'm caught in between. You need to fight for yourself, and at the same time, like 2 automatic qualifiers really isn't that raw of a deal. I'm sorry, it's not. You're not getting royally screwed. I get that the other leagues have 2 more than you do, and yes, probably would end up having like 60 or 2 in most years, potentially. So I understand that risk. But I do also think there is that risk of, okay, well, you guys get no automatic qualifiers. And so there you go. So like, and so that's the whole thing is like, how far do you push this thing? And I'm at the point now where I think they've been doing this and stringing you out these last couple of years to where it's always been like well, just remember, here we come. Like, we're going to eventually be the ones calling the shots and you're going to have no say. So we're going to remember what happens here. And I get that, but this is your last chance to fight. So I kind of feel like you have to fight. But at the same time, you do have to acknowledge that, well, could this actually be better than what we're leading to by fighting this? And that's the dilemma. And that's why you get paid millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to make these decisions. And I'm not getting paid that to make these decisions, but I recognize what a tough spot it is.
Why can't the 2 remaining Autonomy 4 that are not the big boys, the 800-pound gorillas, along with everybody else in college sports, how much clout do they have compared to the Big Ten and the SEC and 34 teams that are the monster conferences that they have? How much do they have? Is it enough or not?
Okay. Part of the problem is that the Big 12 and the ACC aren't necessarily aligned with each other.
No, that's true.
That's another issue.
They're kind of like looking at
altogether.
each other sideways.
Yeah. So I don't think that they're not, but they aren't. So you've got that problem. This comes down to Craig's point of how hard do you call a bluff?
Yeah.
If it is a bluff. And I think there is, in my opinion, there's a lot of it that's a bluff, because I do think that both Sankey and Petiti know that if they shove out, the ACC and the Big 12, you are shoving out a gigantic swath of the country in the national championship.
Then they're taking their mask off finally and just exposing themselves fully of what they're really doing.
Yeah, you don't care about college football. You care about this, and it's not going to be good. And the TV networks don't want that either, because then they've got to do all this. So how far do you push it, and how far do you risk it? Because if you do call their bluff and they are, they're crazy enough to do it and go, okay, fine. All right. You called our bluff. to hell with you. I think at this point, Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips believe that so far they're all pretty much on the same page. And really this comes down to a fight over the automatic qualifiers at its core. And the argument against it should just be the overall quality of the playoff. And you want to make sure that you have the 16 best teams in every single year, as opposed to the 16 teams that are contractually obligated to be in.
I just think this whole conversation sucks because it should be a lot simpler, and it shouldn't be this whole political exercise. And I don't know what you're talking about with clout. I mean, I keep asking how much clout they don't really have any clout. I mean, to really do anything. I don't even know where that comes into play. They have as much say as they basically always had, which is more than most and slightly less to maybe a lot less than the two other leagues. But beyond that, they're the third and fourth most powerful leagues. And for whatever that's worth, they have a say right now, but they're not going to have a say for very much longer. So that's what level of clout they have. They don't have any like throw things on the table and like, anything along those lines. So they're in a spot where it's not, nothing, but they're also not, able to just like throw haymakers back and forth. But they can throw a punch or two, and maybe this is where you finally start firing off a couple jabs and an uppercut or two, and you call the bluff and you say, like you said, maybe in the last few days of not only do we not like this, but we want 3 automatic qualifiers. And then like we got to also acknowledge like how much of this is still a negotiation. You see these reports and it's stated or it's reacted to as though it's like concrete or something. And like, this is the only way that it's like, no, they were given 2. They don't like that. They want 3. How now does the SEC and Big Ten respond? Like, this is all fluid. This is not, and so it's politics, it's chess, and that's where I'm not a chess player. So I don't know what the next move is if you're Phillips and Yormark in response, or on the other side of the coin, if now they're saying, well, not only do we not like just 2, like we want 3. So now what is Sankey or Phillips? Sankey or who's the Big Ten commish? Petiti. What's their next? And they've got like 10 steps down the line already like set up. I mean, they've shown that this entire last 4 or 5 years how architected up this whole, or how built up this whole plan has been. So that's the intrigue, I guess is the best word for this whole situation. If you don't have a dog in the fight, so you're not living and dying emotionally on this thing of like, where's my team going? If you're just looking at it from the outside, it's like, man, what a chess match this is. Yeah. And where does it lead? And I think it leads to some level of compromise eventually, because I don't think that the SEC and the Big Ten want to just go, all right, we're ripping the mask off and we're destroying college football, and here's your 40-team Super League. Because while that's probably the goal at some point, I don't think it's necessarily like right now you just want to blow it all up. But
because the risk right now is if you blow it all up,
politicians get involved, antitrust and all sorts of stuff.
All these things. And then you also have to go to networks and be like, look, guys, you're going to have to sell Northwestern versus Vanderbilt really hard, because now we have undermined the stuff that you also have in the Big 12 and the ACC when it comes to the national championship picture.
Yeah. So I just think it's a chess match right now. And it's not anything like not every report's a statement of fact. It's just, hey, here's where we are. And so that's where we were as of yesterday. And, we'll see what the coming days bring, but there's negotiations and there's discussions to be had. And we'll see when the next big thing pops up of what kind of progress or lack thereof was made, or where maybe it started to turn in a different direction. But it's a fight that I think you've got to fight if you're the Big 12 at this point and you're the ACC, because the ACC, like, you're kind of in a weird predicament as it is already. So I think for both those leagues, you kind of got to go down swinging at some point. You can't just, because every other time you just sort of like, all right, we'll go along with that. And then the other side gets what they want, and you kind of maybe sort of get what you want, but not fully. And at what point do you just go like, it's now or never? Like, we got to, and you know what? This is the last year what you say matters, quite frankly, to where it has any sort of power behind it. So if you're not going to do it now, guess what? You're never going to be able to do it again.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm just kind of tossing some things out there. So if you aren't among the alphas in the SEC, you still get the same, right? You still get the same amount as Alabama, gets the same amount as South Carolina or Vanderbilt or whoever else. In the ACC, it's a little bit different, and they had their meetings this week, and we will have David Teal who writes on the ACC and a lot of other college football today on that at 425. In the Big 12, it's equal. In the Big 10, is it equal? Does Michigan get the same as Northwestern?
Yeah.
So I still think that when you have whatever might be down the road in 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it might be, the SEC has always been loyal to everybody in their neighborhood. Do you think they'll do that if they split into a super league? Because there's no way they would do that without a handful of another 8 to 12 or 16 teams elsewhere ahead of even those who have been a part of the SEC forever.
Do I think that other conferences will take the ACC's ratings model and try to sneak it in to their next TV agreement? Yes. Do I think that they will ultimately saw off the lesser members? I don't know, because then you're also kind of hurting your vocal majority.
I don't believe they're doing that.
I don't either.
I don't think we're. I don't think that's a really I know it's a fun what if conversation. I actually have something regarding the conference championship games that I think is actually way more prevalent and interesting that we can maybe get to later. But yeah, I don't think that's in the cards like in the immediate future. I think there's too much stuff to figure out first before you start going, can we cut Vanderbilt? And even then, like, who you beating up on every year?
Yeah.
Is it always going to be this should be Notre Dame, Michigan every week? Like, that's what I've always said about the Super League thing is, like, at some point there's got to be some, like, people to eat the L's and some people to comprise, the other parts of the league that aren't just all super duper elite. Because you know what that means if you do super duper elite? Somebody's going to suck. Or it's just going to be the most mid across the board league.
7-5.
Everybody's 7-5, and maybe a couple of them are like 10-win teams or something. But like Oklahoma or A&M or South Carolina are going to be the Cleveland Browns. Like somebody has to be, right? Yeah. Or it's going to be the most mid league in the world. And the same people who, say mid 12 or things like that are going to be cheering for a league and pretend they never said that, even though that's what that league turns into. So I don't think, I think that the Super League is absolutely a real concept, but I don't think that where people's brains go is like, all right, they're going to cut out all the smaller teams right away. I don't think that's like anywhere close to being a reality anytime soon.
But I do think that they will put the screws to them a little bit more if they see if this,
you need to invest in things like that.
If this ACC thing works the way that the ACC hopes it will and appeases the larger brands of, the majority of the TV dollars are going to go based on ratings and all of that. I think the other leagues will adopt that in the future. Like this whole everybody gets the same regardless of ratings thing is a great concept and everybody should do it. But if the ACC manages to keep together because of it, then, it would not surprise me to see Ohio State and Michigan go like, well, yeah, I mean, you guys are here because of us. So, we'll take our cut. You'll still be fine, but we're going to get more of it.
Man, if you think there's problems sitting there trying to ditch the Big 12 and ACC, get ready to start trying to kick Northwestern out of the league and see what kind of freaking lawsuits and stuff that turns into. Yep. And then plus, like, if that is anywhere close, it's down the line a great deal because they're not even settled on NIL yet. So how they going to compose the Super League when they can't even decide on auto bids for next year's playoff or the whole parameters around it? NIL is a mess. All these things haven't been figured out. The last thing I'm worried about at this very moment, although if I'm somebody who's getting paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to make these decisions, then you need to be looking 10 years down the line. We know Sankey, based on his own words, has been doing that the entire time. That's how he was so ready to scoop up Oklahoma and Texas and make some of the moves that they've made. You do have to be thinking down the line, and he's been one of the better ones at that. But at the same time, like that's the 100th thing I'm worried about right now. If like I'm Mac Rhodes or somebody is like, oh, well, what are they going to do with Northwestern in the Super Big Ten League? Like, we're nowhere close to that. Like, we might be closer than we think we are to that, but like that's so far down the list of concerns right now. It's fun to think about, but I just don't think it's really that. I don't think there's much of a point of having that conversation right now because it's so out of the realm of the list of concerns at this point.
I don't think it's quite as just throwing things against the wall when it comes to realignment, because realignment will happen when the next TV deals are up, which is about the time perhaps when there is the possibility of any kind of separation.
There is that. I just don't think that that's going to be the Big Ten saying, hey, Northwestern, get out. Because,
no, I don't think they will.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't. Even as much as we got bigger muscles, there is still, even though we've lost some regionality and rivalries in college athletics, college football especially, it seems like to me, there is still something, man, about kicking out your cousin or someone who's been there with you no matter what. And they've been loyal too, no matter how the rise of revenue is because of maybe 6 or 8 teams in the SEC overall. Now, the ACC did have their meetings. Brett McMurphy mentioned this earlier. There was the discussion the ACC might go to a 9th league game, a 9th conference game, but not right now. That doesn't mean they won't, but they would be open to that in the future. Big 10 and Big 12 each have 9 league games. SEC is considering adding a 9th league game, and they'll do that because they'll get more money in return. I'm sure the ACC probably not quite in that same position. But, Paul, you're an FSU guy, and you love the ACC. We'll have David Teal on at 425. Would you like to see him go to 9? Does it matter to you?
Yeah, it does. I would like them to, look, if the SEC is going to get rid of their whiny little baby excuse, then the ACC really has no excuse, and they've been hiding behind the SEC on this for a long time. Yeah, I would like to see 9 games. I'd like them to see play more of the teams in their conference. If conferences don't matter anymore, then what are we doing here? If that's not a thing. And now, look, I know it's been radically changed, but yeah, if everybody else is going to play 9, go play 9. I also think if everybody else is going to go play 9, don't willfully put yourself at a weaker position when it comes down to selecting teams for the playoff and their seeding, because we've seen it comes down to splitting hairs. And if you have one less conference game, no matter if you happen to be 10-2 and the SEC team is 9-3, if all 9 of those wins came in the SEC, they're probably going to get a nice little bump over you. And so don't give them an excuse. Just go play 9, make it the standard. I get they'd have to ask potentially the SEC, maybe they can ask ESPN for more money. Maybe ESPN's not game for that, but blah, 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 blah. Just go do it.
I don't know, Paul. I disagree wholeheartedly. You grumble over the money part. That's exactly why the SEC is not doing an extra game. So why should the ACC?
But ESPN's about to give them more money to do it.
Yeah. So if you're the ACC, I'd say, sure, I'll do it, but I want more money to do it as well. Yeah. I'm not going to get as much money as the SEC is going to get for it, but I'm just going to do it just because everybody else is doing it. Or I can sit there and go, well, I don't have to do it. And if you want me to do it, then you're going to give me something for it.
But see, here's where I wonder. They've been so bad with their media deals in the first place. I wonder if they've done this. I truly wonder if Jim Phillips has actually done this.
Thought ahead,
hey, well, if they'll do it, then we'll do it. Because the SEC, Greg Sankey's been pretty candid about look, we'll do a 9th game, but we have to talk to our media partners. And then
I saw a comment in passing and it made a lot of sense. Now, this isn't a straight thing across the board, but hey, Georgia Tech, congratulations. You're not playing Tennessee in the non-con, but you get an extra game against freaking Boston College. Yeah. Congratulations. So that's also, you got to think about that is, is that actually a better schedule or is it just a more watered down schedule? And I know that that's not a complete, perfect comparison, but it was along the lines of that, a comment I saw, and I agreed with it at the time of, be careful what you wish for. You could be knocking out a great non-con game, or it could be Furman that you're replacing with Boston College. And that is a better upgrade. I guess it would all be the devil in the details. But yeah, I'm not just saying, all right, well, everybody else is doing 9, so I'm going to do 9 for free, even though this wasn't agreed to in our contract and ESPN never came to us about anything. Hell no. I'm going to say ESPN, we've seen the talk. We've discussed it ourselves. What do y'all think about 9 games? And we know you're talking to the SEC about it. We know that if they're going to do it, you're going to give them more money. We know we're not going to get as much money as them, but how much can you give us? I also think there's the whole issue looming in the background of, how long are you signing up for this? And what does this look like? You signing up for 9 games, a post Clemson FSU world, whenever that is? Or, are we going to wait and see how things play out first? I think maybe they let things play out first, but that to me would be an indication today that is what they're doing. The fact that they're going ahead and tabling that talk, and it's public now that they're not considering it. And why would you? I don't think there's any incentive to do that because, again, what benefit does that do it right now with everything in upheaval and unsettled? It does you no good whatsoever.
Fair point. I just think that, they like I want everybody to like I wish they would just everybody else would play 8, but like,
I agree with that.
Like I just want it to be uniform across the board.
Sure.
You can play 9 games and do that. Like, but I don't like their public facing like responses to it. It doesn't seem like they really want to for any reason. Like even the more money thing, I think the most of the schools will not want to.
Help me out again. So they have 8 conference games. Notre Dame is not a conference game.
Yeah.
Against Clemson or whoever. So they play like 5 of those games each year, Notre Dame?
Yeah.
So they have 8. Florida State has the common rivalry with Florida. That would give them 9. What other games do they have to play other than those 9 every year? I mean, that they like rivalries or otherwise. Is that just 3 other teams that they play?
Yeah. I mean, that would be the 12 game schedule.
So how many teams in the ACC have more than 9 games, including the rivalry game and maybe Notre Dame, that would create a problem in adding another conference game?
I mean, not many, I don't think.
I don't think any of them would.
Like, okay, so what you're doing is, you're like Craig said.
Hold on.
You're taking away the game against Furman.
Yeah,
that's what you'd be taking away.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many games you have left. You're just replacing one of whatever you have left with a conference game. It doesn't matter if it's Tennessee or if it's Furman. That's what you're replacing it with. It's just that simple. It's not like Clemson's non-con is all rivals that they must play every year. They got to play South Carolina. What about the other 2? Okay, they got to play Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame doesn't even count as an ACC game in this agreement this week, so that's not even a conference game. So that's another non-con.
2 left. You have 2 left.
So then you have one of those 2, and that's your 9th ACC game. So pretty simple.
I just picked Pitt. Their schedule this year is Duquesne, Central Michigan, and West Virginia. So
West Virginia probably.
Yeah, hopefully not, but that's probably what they would do.
Yeah,
but it should be by Duquesne.
It should be, but
by Duquesne is what
that would also be determined on what's the
money,
there's a lot of these things we're talking about. There's so many other things that are involved in it. So does strength of schedule matter? How is it measured? How much does it matter? So you might want to replace Duquesne rather than replace West Virginia. Like, how many bids does the ACC have? Are you playing a tougher schedule? Or are you playing a lighter schedule to try to be one of those 2? Those are the things. It's not just like, I don't know. I just think it's kind of simple, but there are some details that do matter. But for the most part, nobody's schedule is totally filled out with auto play games that you can't just add an ACC game. It's Furman or it's West Virginia, and boom, bam, thank you, ma'am, we're done in the schedule 6 for 2027 or whatever year you're trying to do.
All right, we have Sam early. Is that right? Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, joined us on, well, not early. It's he's always prompt. He joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thank you very much. Great to have you on. He's about to be busy, man. Have meetings, etc., travel, and my God, maybe even taking a few days off occasionally between now and media days. Sam, we were discussing, just like the Southern Conference Commissioner is speaking out. And if everybody other than the Big Ten and the SEC all kind of combined arms, locked their arms together, do they have any way of trying to change the momentum that they're all going to be just kind of in a way pushed aside?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they have a 0% chance. I do think if there was some type of unity outside of those 2 big behemoth conferences, that you'd actually have a chance to make something happen, because I think we saw it a little bit even in this discussion that we've had about the multiple auto bids. If you guys remember, they were talking about multiple auto bids last year. And after it got floated and there was a lot of bad reaction to it, and then they kind of backed off of it for a little while. Now, of course, we're back in that discussion again. And I think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, as much as they want to do what's best for their own conference, and they're going to do that at the end of the day, I do think they're not necessarily insensitive to a collective backlash. And that's the key, though, is what you said, Dave, is if it's only a few scattered voices from a few conferences, it's one thing. But if it's the rest of the FBS, or if it's the rest of college football shouting this from the rooftops, then you have a chance, I think, of maybe pushing back against some of this stuff. But on the flip side, their power is kind of codified in this contract. They have more say, they have more revenue in this upcoming college football playoff contract. So in some ways, everybody can kind of bellyache all they want, and the SEC and Big Ten can do what they want if they want to. But I do think if the collective backlash is enough, they might realize that it's shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, and Sam, it would be because you're alienating a lot of the country. They have a ton of fans, but they're still just 34 schools, right? But I think therein lies the problem, right? Is that the ACC and Big 12 aren't necessarily in lockstep with each other on this. And it would really have to start with those two and then trickle down to the G6 and then below that for any kind of unity to happen. But I wouldn't say that Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark are in lockstep right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing I would say that I have found surprising in all of this is how reluctant those two commissioners have been to speak out when things like this happen. And I'm going to attribute it to the fact that they're doing it because their leagues stand to get multiple auto bids also, and they don't want to ruin that chance. Like the ACC and the Big 12 will both get 2 in this format that's being proposed, and I think they both realize getting 2 guaranteed is good because there's some years you may not get 2. For instance, the Big 12, I only had the 1 last year. They probably should have had 2, and you guys have discussed this, and I think BYU was vastly underappreciated and underrated at the end of the season in the playoff discussion. They were really not even a factor in the playoff discussion. I thought they should have been. But I think because of they're thinking, hey, we got the bird in the hand with 2, let's not rock the boat too much. I would take and it's easy for me to say I'm not running the conference. I don't have anybody's power in my hands. But I think if those two stood up together in lockstep and said, hey, we're not down for this, maybe it would have an impact. I'm really surprised, and especially Yormark, who has been willing to take risks in other areas, who's been willing to be bold in some of his decision-making. I'm really surprised they haven't been more vocal, or he hasn't been more vocal in bucking back against some of this publicly. I don't think the commissioners have a lot to lose by bucking back at him, because if they lose the auto bid, if this fell apart because the Big 12 and the ACC said they didn't like it, and then they took away an auto bid and made them only single bid leagues, I think the backlash to that publicly would be enormous.
So, Sam, I think we talked about this last week with you a little bit. The commission was announced. There's really no new details. It's just that now we've heard Nick Saban talk about it, and there was the funny line. This is Twitter in a nutshell. Like, you see a line from an interview, but there's more context to it, right? So he basically said, I don't think we need a commission. And everybody's like, oh, he doesn't even think that there needs to be a commission. I think what he was saying is that they already know the problems, right? Like, that's, I think, what the context was I don't think we needed a commission to identify the problems. We already know what the problems are. Now it's about working on them. How have your thoughts, been or developed or changed maybe in the last few days, just as we've gotten more, not clarity on the details, but we've kind of seen this thing sort of been talked about a little bit more?
Yeah, the thing with the clip on Feinbaum, there's a couple things I have to say about that. One, the fact that he said, I don't know a lot about the commission, or I don't think we need a commission, to me, I took that as head coach deflect the question when I don't want to answer it. The same way a head coach stands up at a press conference and says, and is asked about an injury and they don't want to disclose the information. Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Of course they know what you're talking about. They know exactly everything that's going on with the team. Of course Nick Saban knows what's going on here, but he doesn't want to answer because it hasn't been announced yet. And he may not be authorized to publicly say what they're going to do yet because it hasn't been officially codified that they're doing this. So that was kind of how I took that. But the funny thing to me was that he said, I don't really think we need a commission. Then he went on to say, I think there's a lot of people out there that know how to fix it. I think we may just have to push forward and get everybody together, and some of it may need to be done on the federal level. What is that if not a commission? Like, that sounds like a commission to me. So a group of people on the federal level trying to get something done. So that sounds that's the funny thing is, as he went on to talk, everything he said sounded like things that they're going to do in this commission. So for what I think about what's going to happen with it is, or what kind of impact it may have, is I just want to see who the other people are going to be on it. I like the choices of Nick Saban and Cody Campbell as co-chairs, but I want to see who else is on it. Are we getting people who have a really deep knowledge of college sports? Are we getting a wide cross-section across sports? Because I would admit, if this is a commission on college sports, in theory, it's not just football. So I would like to see, are you having some Olympic sport athletes? Are you having some women on it? And also, how far removed are they from college sports? If they were an athlete or a former coach, how far removed are they? How involved are they? How much knowledge do they have from an institutional level? I would love to know that, because that to me will give me a sense for how serious this thing can be.
What do you think what Saban meant when he said he's not real sure that they need a commission? Was he already kind of just, maybe since he was named to it, he didn't really, like, maybe he doesn't know if it's a good. That's what he said yesterday on the.
Yeah,
Fine Bar
I
show.
think he's just deflecting. I think it's just deflection because it's not publicly announced yet. That's the way I read it.
Okay.
As far as we know, everything is still moving forward. And me and Justin Williams and Chris Vanini, we had an update on this morning. As far as we know, everything is still moving forward, and they're still working to get this thing formed. So there's been, despite what he said yesterday, there's been no change to our knowledge that this thing is happening. This thing is still moving forward as at this moment, as far as we know. Of course, as you know, things can change really quickly. But as of this morning, when we followed up, everything seems to point to this. The thing is still forming.
I took it a little bit differently. I took it as he's going to be on it because he was asked to be on it. But I think like you said before, they know the problems. And actually, I kind of read it as, I think we know the fixes too. Like they know, they know what the fix is. They know, like, they can sit around and do all that, and they can. And if the committee is admitting what the fix is and then trying to build the mechanisms to do that, then great. But that's never been what these committees are about.
No, and here's the thing: they know what the fix is, but is the fix legal?
Right?
Is the fix allowable? Like, can you pull it off? Like, because in Paul, I think you've hammered on this a lot over the last few weeks. The easy answer is collective bargaining in employment. Like, that's the easy answer, because you can get every restriction that you want, and you can get every concession that you want from the athletes if you can bargain with them and they can agree to it. But that's where this whole thing, the rubber meets the road on this whole thing, is they're trying to thread the needle of treating them like employees without giving them employee status. And that is a very tough needle to thread. And so as long as they're trying to do that, it's going to require these gymnastics that we're doing constantly to kind of find the middle ground between not making them employees, but giving them compensation and giving them some type of protections, and trying to regulate movement and trying to regulate payment and all that stuff. I mean, the reason a salary cap works in the NFL or the NBA or there's not one in Major League Baseball, but the reason it works in those two sports and the reason why a free agency calendar works the way it does is because it's collectively bargained.
So, Sam, you mentioned the article. It's a great article you, Chris Vanini, Justin Williams have, and we're discussing some of the parts of it. But for those who haven't checked it out, go over to theathletic.com, and you go over not only kind of what Nick Saban has said in the past, but also Cody Campbell, who's a very interesting piece to this. Anything stand out to you from maybe either side about their proposals? And I know, like, some of it, I just immediately go, that's not happening. Like the reorganizing of conferences, to where we're going to reform the Southwest Conference. Like Texas and A&M are not going to go for that after working so hard to get in the SEC, right? Like, unless they were somehow forced to. But does anything stand out about those two and their ideas for football, maybe more so than others?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is that there's two things that stand out to me. When you look back at the past stances for these two, particularly with Cody Campbell, is Cody has been an advocate for everybody, and that means not ceding power to the Big Ten and the SEC, and making sure that whatever this commission does or whatever college sports changes are enacted, that they're inclusive of all of FBS or all of Division I. And I think that's an important perspective to have, because Nick Saban, on the other hand, has been on this, hey, we should only have the Power Four schools play each other. And so I think they differ on that stance. And that's going to be fascinating where their co-chairs. I'll be curious to see how that discussion goes when they eventually meet. The other thing that's interesting, and to your point, Craig, about things not being possible, I don't think this is possible at all. But the idea that Cody had about pooling the rights together, the media rights, which is something that actually we did 30 years ago when the College Football Association existed. After the 1984 Supreme Court decision and schools and conferences were given the power to negotiate their own deals, the College Football Association grabbed, I think it was the Southwest Conference, the SEC, the ACC, the WAC, several conferences, and they collectively negotiated those rights. Cody Campbell's idea is for college sports to get included in the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which is what allowed the NFL to collectively negotiate its rights without an antitrust violation. So his idea is, hey, let's get college football involved in that and pool the entire FBS rights together and sell that. And the reason he argues that is his stance is that they can make a lot more money than they do now, where they're competing against each other, where the Big Ten is competing against the SEC for media rights dollars, or those two conferences are competing against the Big 12 and the ACC for media rights dollars, or the Group of Five conferences are competing against each other. His stance is, hey, can we get them all together and just pull the whole thing together and sell it off the way the NFL does, would they sell off their things to Fox or CBS or Amazon or whatever? And I do think there's a legitimacy to that it could make a lot more money than what you do now, but I don't think there's ever any shot of that happening. I would be untangling all those contracts as they stand now, which I imagine they're pretty ironclad. It would be hard to untangle them, but I also wonder, would the Big Ten and the SEC be even willing to do that? Would they be willing to play on the same field with everything?
Hey, I agree with them on that point, Sam. I think that's a good idea. I agree. But
is that going to include the Group of Five?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay, then Alabama or Ohio State, which is they're getting a large chunk. Would they get more than they're getting now?
And that's what we don't know yet.
Yeah,
we don't know. Like we just know that his idea is do it collectively. How that revenue gets divvied up, I don't know what that would look like. I think certainly you would have those programs would argue that they should get more, and we're already seeing that play out at the conference level in the ACC with what the ACC did with its uneven revenue distribution. So that would be a really hard thing to do. But I do think if you were able to find a way to do it, it would tamper down realignment, and you would be able to help some of these programs that are a little bit less fortunate in terms of financials in the athletic department, that you'd help them survive.
Sam Conn with us, theathletic.com on 365 Sports, joins us most Thursdays, the next few weeks on and off because of duties he has personally, but also with meetings with theathletic.com. Well, so what's next? What's the next story? Is it the House settlement decision? What is next in your opinion?
Yeah, I think once we get the House settlement, because we also have, I think a lot of things are being held up because of that. The Football Oversight Committee, some of the decisions they want to make. There's always, of course, we know there's been a lot of discussion of whether or not there should be 2 portal windows or 1. None of that movement's going to happen until we actually get a settlement. The thing that I'm really curious about, that I'm going to be tracking or try to track this summer, is once the settlement is approved, what is the fate of NIL collectives? Are collectives still going to exist? And what is the state of this NIL clearinghouse? The Deloitte obviously is going to be in charge of flagging the deals and deciding what's market value and what's not. But I have a really big question, is what happens when deals start getting turned down for not being fair market value? From my understanding of the settlement is that because of the settlement and because this clearinghouse is going to be part of the settlement, that people will not be able to sue for it. But I'll be curious to see how schools are going to react, because, as long as people have tried to limit compensation in college football, people have always tried to get around it. So if you put a cap at $22 million, someone's going to try to exceed it. And how are they going to go about that? So I'm curious to see, do collectives get shut down? Are schools just going to pay straight out of revenue share? Or are they going to try to find ways outside of the true NIL, or a way to do true NIL through a collective somehow? And what does that look like? What does enforcement look like? I'd be really curious to know, if they flag a deal and they say it's not true market value, is there a penalty for it? Or what do you, if you turn it down, or if a team exceeds the cap, what happens? What kind of penalties are there that are going to be levied on that program? Those are all things that I think are still very unclear at this point, and I'm curious to see how that all unfolds as we get through the settlement.
Anything else, guys? Sam Conn. I brought this up, Sam, and this is not right now, and it's not imminent, but you hear about the possibility of separation. The elite get even more elite, and there's this so-called whatever might be a separation into a super league. I'm of the opinion, no matter what South Carolina, and by the way, they're getting a lot better, but no matter what Northwestern or Vanderbilt are, that the other schools who are bigger, better, faster, and stronger, who have been with them for a long, long time, are not going to leave them behind. They're not going to leave the uncles and cousins, aunts and whoever else behind. Do you agree with that?
I would not say I'm confident in that
Okay.
because here's why. Look at the Pac-12. Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA left all those other schools in the Pac-12 behind. And so look at FSU and Clemson were ready to leave the ACC, their ACC mates behind. We saw it in the Southwest Conference eons ago where Texas and Texas A&M, and Baylor and Texas Tech left their conference mates behind. It's a tale as old as time in this sport. So am I under the impression that Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and Texas now, since they're in the SEC, would they not go leave Vanderbilt and Kentucky behind? I don't believe for a second that they would have a problem leaving them behind if they had to. If push came to shove, and now the difference is you have a commissioner. Would the commissioner allow it? Would Greg Sankey allow that to happen? Probably not. Would Tony Petitti allow it to happen? Probably not. So then at that point, it becomes a power struggle between the presidents of the schools at the halves and the commissioner and the leadership of those leagues. And then could you be getting into lawsuits? Our favorite thing to do in college sports now is sue. So yeah, I think I would call it unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out by any stretch because there's too many times I've seen it happen in the last 40 years to know better that they would leave them behind in a heartbeat.
Yeah, just recently. I mean, you're right. Oregon State, Washington State are alone because everybody bolted. Yeah,
you're only as loyal as your options.
Yeah,
that's right. 100%. 100%. That's a really good analogy.
I just think that those folks in the South, though, they're just a little bit more together as a family. They're not going to. They're just a little bit more.
They hide it
loyal.
Better.
They do.
No, I think Dave's right because look. What's one of the reasons the Southwest Conference fell apart is not because everybody was cheating, but because everybody was telling on each other.
Yeah.
How many SEC programs were telling on each other? I don't think the infighting in that league was as out in the open as it was in the Southwest Conference. I could be wrong. My memory could be serving me 30, 40 years ago, but SMU and TCU and Texas A&M, and they were all Houston. They were all bickering in each other, and eventually ended up causing the death penalty, of course, and all those programs having sanctions, and then the league ends up dissolving. I feel like the SEC kind of kept it a little bit like there were programs getting in trouble, but they weren't. I don't know if they were tattling on each other as much as the Southwest Conference. So I think Dave's right in that there's a cultural bond between those programs, and they're the only conference that I know that cheers the conference name.
Absolutely.
When they're at a sporting event, I've never heard anybody cheer ACC. I've never heard anybody cheer Big Ten at a game. So I think there's something to that.
Auburn would turn Alabama in a heartbeat, vice versa, but they wouldn't want them to go as far as like ending the program. No, we need them because we hate them. We need them. By the way, in the chat room, this is from Kim. This is why Sam Kahn is one of my 3 favorite guests. He brings great information, insight to every single interview.
I think the SEC is more mob-like, though. Like, they're loyal, but they've got kind of the mafia rules. So, like, there might be an SEC body on the ground, but you're not going to know who did it. Like, you're just going to be like, well, sorry about it.
Yeah.
That's fair. Sankey might have a little bit of a mob boss mentality or demeanor to him. I think.
Well, he sure acts like it. Yeah.
Hey, what happened to Mississippi State? I don't know.
He's a little bit cutthroat. I will say, he's not the kind of guy you want to cross. Speaking of the chat, Smoak, I made sure I didn't want to cross you today because I see you're getting feisty in the chat today.
No, I am. Okay, you guys help answer this question. If you take the evaluation of the Big Ten and the SEC, not just the college football playoff money or the distribution or the network, but if you take the evaluation of those 2 conferences, it is more than half of the 100% pie combined. Then you add the ACC, the Big 12, and all of the group of 5s together. There are more teams, but the evaluation, the network money, the college football playoff, everything is above 50%, if not nearly 60% compared to the other ones combined. Someone was trying to argue that is not the case, that they're more valuable combined than the Big Ten and the SEC. That's not true.
And Dave was checking them. He was checking them. So I know now. You better come with facts if you come at Smoak.
Well, I went in there and looked. I looked it up, and it's like 58% minimum of how much of the 100% pie. Sam, thank you, buddy. Great to have you on the show. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Sam Kahn doing a lot of work over the next few weeks because I think we'll get him in a couple of weeks, but glad we had him on in fact, today. Coming up around the corner, Ross Dellinger will join us from Yahoo Sports, who is always busy. One note about Maryland. They are hiring Atlanta Braves executive Jim Smith as the school's next athletic director, expected to come together very soon. Brings a blend of professional and college experience from various professional sports leagues and a part of Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this goes. But more professional guys are getting into, because it's, guess what? And this is what's going to lead to, this is smart by Maryland, to hire a guy who's got professional experience, because eventually you're going to have somebody like, well, the collective bargaining agreement in these leagues says this. So this is how we dealt with it there. So more of this, college athletics, because again, collective bargaining coming. It's coming whether they want it or not.
Yeah, I mean, we're championing it, but that's also kind of the, for lack of a better word, I was going to say a curse word, but I guess the messy part of this is that you're rooting for them to further professionalize it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, great, the Braves guy, so we can make this even more corporate. You know what I mean? That's what kind of sucks about it. Like, it's a smart hire based on his background and where the sport is going. It's a hire that makes a lot of sense. And unlike BYU's AD, where it seemed like if you read all of the responses, it was pretty split. People who weren't in love with the hire, people who were like, hey, give it a chance, or people who loved it. I haven't seen much of anything other than like, yeah, this makes sense for this hire for Maryland. So, we'll see, what their future looks like in this brave new world. But fortunate to be in the Big Ten, that's for damn sure. That was a brilliant move years ago, and not a program I think a lot about, to be honest with you. Like, they don't cross my brain very often, but it seems to make a lot of sense. And yeah, there is the catch-22 of a brilliant hire because of where it's going, and also, where it's going means you're hiring former MLB and pro sports executives constantly.
Imagine if Maryland had not made the move to the Big Ten. Where would they be?
In the ACC.
Yeah. And
here's the thing. They have done what they are kind of like A&M and the SEC. Like, nothing. What's changed about Maryland and the Big Ten other than they get a bigger check at the end of the year?
I think they're lesser known, honestly.
I mean, that's true. But I
don't think A&M is. I think A&M is more well known. But
But
and I know that if I lived in Boston, that probably wouldn't be the case, or in Annapolis or Baltimore or something. But I can tell you down here, like, I think I see far less of them now than I did previously to that 10 years ago.
I know the UT football program
15.
thought about them a couple of years in a row.
That's true. I definitely saw them then.
They
Love
have and basketball, they had a really good year this year, obviously. And now that it all fell apart, Coach AD, everybody's gone there at Maryland, and Buzz Williams is the new basketball coach. But basketball-wise in the ACC, they were one of the reasons the ACC could always go to the meetings and be like, hey, Maryland's a national champion, Duke's a national champion, UNC's a national champion. We're the best basketball league. And then that, one of their four, crown jewel basketball programs bolts. Now, granted, they had only had a little bit of football success under Ralph Regent, but even still, they really I'm like you, Craig. I barely think about them in anything.
Well, I think that's just the state too. Yeah. I mean, how often do you bring up the state of Maryland, really?
The only thing I really think about, because the Orioles they were good last year. They're okay this year. I do enjoy following the Ravens because I like the way they run their organization, but I only really think about the Ravens when it comes to sports.
Yeah, I just think that's one of those places where unless you're from there, it's kind of just not really top of mind or front of mind. But yeah, I mean, I got great memories of watching Steve Francis back in the day, and great players, but they're just not somebody that comes to mind very often. So yeah, good hire. I mean, as far as addressing what college sports is becoming, and we'll see if we're talking about him as having made some big difference, I guess, in a couple of years from now or beyond that. But see where that goes for them.
Here's a couple of comments on some of our discussions. Let's see here. I had it. The last three SEC commissioners made sure that everyone played nice and kept things in-house.
Yeah, it's a family thing.
Absolutely.
I think that also is, you have people that are all, that's where the geography, I think, comes into play. You got people that are all from the same region of the country. It's not like a California person and a Texas person are having to coexist when they're probably politically pretty far different. Now, that's not always the case. Not everybody in Texas is super red, and I know not everybody in California is super blue, but if you're going off stereotypes, that's the way that it is. I just think people in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, they're all right there together. Like there's a common bond and there's a common history. And even the ones that they've added, they just further, it's not like they're 5 states away. They're right there. They're right next to Arkansas and Louisiana already. So you've got just this built-in kind of cohesive. Regionally, it makes sense. Historically, it makes sense. You've got like minds, and you've ultimately got a lot of big schools that love their football and love spending trillions of dollars on football and love to be great at football together and then be able to brag about it as a group together at the end of the year, pretty much every year for what felt like 20 years in a row. So, yeah, I just think it's a different thing for them than it is for anybody else.
All right.
Where it's just, I don't know if it was always intended this way, but the way it's all come together is pretty freaking brilliant. When you look at everybody complaining about travel and all these things, and it's like, here's like this all interconnected space in the country where all these schools coexist.
If you put all the states together that are in that league or a part of that league, it is one big clump.
Yeah.
It's not
like USC randomly in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, when we come back, Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger, I think he writes while he's asleep. I really do. He cranks out stories, and then when other stories are updated, he has stories he's already written about those particular stories. So he's next with us. David Teal does a great job of covering college football and the ACC. He'll join us a little bit later. Craig's off the radar, loaded up today. And also Adam Sparks. So what's it been like at Tennessee ever since Nico Iamaleava transferred to UCLA? An update on their thoughts on college football and more. This is 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Right now at Berg Colgin Ford, we're bringing you an offer that's as big as America. Employee pricing for everyone. You pay what they pay. That means you drive home a new Ford F-150, Bronco Sport, Expedition, Super Duty. From America, for America. Employee pricing for everyone at BK Ford. Looking to sell your vehicle? Get top dollar for yours today. Don't miss out. Employee pricing is available for a limited time. Visit us anytime at bkford.com. Experience better at BK Ford.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Next in
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports. We start this 4 o'clock hour, and I don't know, and there are great writers, columnists, analysts throughout the country, but we've had Ross Dellinger on quite a bit. He puts out an enormous amount of content and is always, I remember a story. He had quotes from Dr. Livingstone after some sort of a committee meeting somewhere up north, and he was outside the door of the ballroom waiting for her. He hustles. He's with us on 365 Sports. Ross, thank you very much for your time. So fight over college football playoff future, messy, etc. No one likes it. So what does that actually, in your opinion, mean for the future?
Well, we don't really know, right? The fourth power conference commissioners will meet again soon, probably within the next week or so. And as I wrote in there, the Big 12 and ACC will potentially propose an alternate model, an alternate format to the one that the Big 10 and SEC is supporting, which, as we all know, I know I've been on your show before to discuss it, the 4-4-2-2-1 model, which is 4 automatic qualifiers each for the Big 10 and SEC, 2 each for the ACC and Big 12, 1 for the best group of 6 champions, and then probably 3 at large. That gives you a 16-team field. So the ACC and Big 12 have made it very clear, and I just got back from ACC spring meetings in Amelia Island, Florida, and where it was made clear that they think they deserve a 3rd automatic qualifier, and I think the Big 12 feels the same way. So is there a way they could get a 3rd automatic qualifier? That is kind of the question, and that's what the 4 commissioners will have to discuss. But looming over all this, obviously, is the fact that the Big 10 and SEC, through a new agreement signed last year, control playoff format. So ultimately, they are the deciders.
So, Ross, you mentioned that they both want kind of the same thing, but I've never gotten the impression that they're walking in lockstep either, though, the Big 12 and ACC.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We haven't necessarily seen them sort of working together, and it's certainly not in the way the Big 10 and the SEC have been working together. We certainly have seen them have joint AD meetings, several joint AD meetings. Their commissioners have met together separately too. So we've seen a lot of that from the Big 10 and SEC. We haven't seen that as much from the Big 10 or Big 12 and ACC, but maybe that's this is something that ignites that between the two leagues. But I think they're on this issue. They're going to have to come up with some kind of alternate proposal. It would seem, or the Big 10 and SEC plan to go forward with the 4-4-2-2-1 model to start next year.
Yeah, so as you point out, Ross, that they can fight back or come up with alternates, but ultimately it's really not even in their control. So to what extent do you feel like the Big 10 and SEC are even listening, and what is, I guess, just for the greater good of college football, that they're entertaining potentially alternate proposals and the Big 12 and ACC having some say in matters?
Yeah, we don't really know. I know, as you probably read about my story yesterday, right now there certainly is political pushback on this CFB format that the Big 10 and SEC are proposing. You have it from the public and also from politicians and starting to roll in. And so you wonder if that pushback will sort of change their stance on how the Big 10 and SEC handle things moving forward. As the political pressures, we have to remember that, the Big 10 and SEC have been up here to Washington fairly often recently, lobbying for help from lawmakers. And this playoff format certainly disadvantages certain segments of the country, and that has to be, taken into account when you look at the lobbying effort from those two leagues, in other leagues as well, but the lobbying effort on Capitol Hill. So, I think probably the best chance for this thing to derail in some way is just one of two things happening, right? It's either they're going to accept the Big 12 or ACC's alternate proposal, which we don't really know what that might be, but certainly it's some way in whatever is proposed, it would give the ACC and the Big 12 a third automatic qualifier under certain conditions, maybe under the rankings. Or in the second way, that this thing could be derailed is with just perception, the public pushback and the political pushback.
Ross, why? I mean, why would I guess they're saying 3 so they can get up from 2. But
is that for both conferences or 5 for the 2?
So my question being, why would they not at least publicly say, just the conference champions and no guaranteed total number of automatic qualifiers, like 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever? Like, why? Like, that to me would be the better argument, because you're saying, like, you're going to have to skip over some teams in certain years to put a 4th Big Ten or SEC team in.
Well, I think the SEC and Big Ten, it's been a while, but I've written a little bit about why in the past, just why they've come up with the multiple automatic bids. And really it goes to the fact that the Big Ten and SEC want certain guaranteed access spots so they can do a few things. Number one is schedule in the non-conference bigger games. Right now, I think you're seeing big non-conference games. Administrators are avoiding them for fear that a loss would keep you out of the CFP, right? And the same goes for the SEC's conversation around playing 9 conference games. They haven't done it partly because, a loss, right, in a 9th game could keep them out of the CFP. So if you have automatic access, guaranteed access, you can do those things, play more non-conference games, play nine SEC games. And then you could play if you play 9 SEC games, the Big Ten currently plays 9 conference games. Then if each league is playing the same amount of conference games, then you could reach an agreement, what they've talked about for several months now, in a Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement where they play each other every year in at least one non-conference game. There's a 4th reason, and there's probably a 5th reason too, of why they want automated, guaranteed access to with these automatic qualifiers, and that is to be able to hold play-in games, as I wrote about in that story, where you'd have play-in games on conference championship weekend. So I'll give you an example of how that might work. If the SEC and Big Ten each gets 4 automatic qualifiers, their top 2 would potentially play in a championship game and both go on to the CFP. But their number 3 in the standings may play their number 6 in their standings in a play-in game on campus on conference championship weekend. The same with their 4th place in the standings will play the 5th place team, and that would be a play-in game for their other 2 automatic qualifiers. And then the 5th reason I think they want to do this is they want to, specifically the Big Ten, wants to basically diminish the authority and subjectiveness of the selection committee.
By having those play-in games, and with the play-in game losers, wouldn't they then be at-large bids?
They could. It just depends on how big the at-large pool is. In a 4-4-2-2-1 16-team bracket, there's 3 at-large, and one of those is protected for Notre Dame if it finishes inside the top 16. Notre Dame would get one of those at-large spots kind of automatically. And so you'd have 2 at-larges. But if there's some kind of compromise reached where it's more of a 4-4-3-3-2 or I'm sorry, a 4-4-3-3-1, like where the Big 12 and ACC get, a third automatic qualifier in some way or some conditional way. You could have as little as one right at large. So the playing games would be real playoff type of games. But you're right. The loser of the Big 10 and SEC play-in games could conceivably get an at-large spot, but it just depends on what happens to that at-large pool.
So going back to something you said, they want to lessen the effectiveness of the committee. So why are they afraid of that? The committee loves them.
Well, they would say the SEC would disagree with you on that after this year or after this past year's bracket, right? They would say that, that SMU, for instance, got in, right, and got beat pretty bad on the road at Penn State. Clemson got in automatically and got beat pretty bad on the road at Texas. Indiana got beat pretty bad at Notre Dame. And so they would say that instead of those teams getting in, their team should have got in, like South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama. That is their argument. Again, not my argument, but that is their argument, that the selection committee is too subjective. It's hard to separate these teams, and there needs to be more automated access like you get in the NFL.
Ross, so what was kind of the reactions, and I don't know how much you had a chance to talk about this with everybody, but just sort of what was the buzz about the presidential commission and the idea and just kind of the thoughts behind that and what that could be moving forward?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. The president's involvement is always something that it certainly gets traction and attention on an issue. I don't know what the power of a commission is, though. I don't know. They can direct Congress, obviously, to do things. They can recommend things to Congress. But a lot of these concepts and these changes that they're talking about making have to go through Congress, and so you still have to involve Congress in that. But it is going to be interesting as this thing is formulated. Who's on it and what role they will play. We just don't know a lot about it right now.
Committees meet and they meet and they meet. But Ross, how many actually ever get anything truly done?
Yeah, it seems like lately a lot of committee meetings don't produce a whole lot of decisions, and we've certainly seen that quite often. And I'm sure we'll continue to to see that as we go forward. The House settlement and the fact that it hasn't been approved yet is really, really, honestly, like holding up a lot of decisions. And I think once the settlement is approved, which could come probably as soon as next week, the NCAA will file either today or tomorrow its final briefing with the judge, and then it's in the judge's hands, any decision. And so we could have a decision probably, within the next 5 to 7 days, I would guess, at most 10 days, I would guess, from the judge on if this settlement is approved or not. And after that, we'll probably get more answers and more decisions on things.
Ross, I have one more question. You mentioned earlier about blowback or political pressure or, the Big Ten and the SEC. Do they feel that? I mean, do they feel that? Do they have any pressure from that? Or do they really care that they're too big for even that to bother them?
Yeah, I don't really know. That's a question probably to start with for the commissioners and some of the athletic directors and school presidents, and maybe we'll find out more on that this month. The Big Ten's conference meetings are next week in outside of Los Angeles, and the SEC meetings are the next week in Destin, Florida. I'll be at the SEC meetings, and we'll maybe find out how much they're feeling the pressure, or if they're feeling the pressure at all.
Ross, do you think that the House settlement, they've come back with people can phase in the roster limits if they want to? Is that if they want to going to make them have to go back and do this again?
Yeah, the optional.
Yeah.
The optional part of that. The argument from the NCAA, and I don't, I think it's actually a fairly good one, is right now roster spots are not guaranteed. Scholarships are guaranteed, but roster spots are not. And so why in this new era should roster spots be guaranteed? It should be optional for the school like it is now. So that was their argument in responses to the judge's concerns. We'll see what she says. It's certainly not in the business of predicting federal judges and how they'll rule. But she, I think a lot of people within college athletics agree that the judge will not blow up this settlement, something that brings as much as $20 billion to mostly minority athletes over the next 10 years, that she will not blow up a settlement over this issue. She's asked them to revise it. They've revised it, maybe not exactly to the liking of many objectors of the settlement, but they have revised it to make it permissible for schools to grandfather in. But you're right, they didn't make it mandatory, and it's not mandatory now, and so that's kind of what they're leaning on.
Your last thing today, and you had you had a report about the NIL clearinghouse, NIL go, and all of what that means. And you'd written about this back in February. A lot of times these things are up there, and you had written about them a month or two beforehand, and you always kind of go back to that. What was the information based on what you reported earlier today in the NIL clearinghouse? Anything that kind of against the wall that sticks?
Yeah, not really. You're right. There was a lot of information filtered out of the House Implementation Committee back in January, February. They had a lot of meetings, and I was able to gather some information and report a lot of the details that are now coming out a little more publicly. It's really, the document that I put out there is really in the weeds on a lot of stuff. But the gist is there will be an NIL clearinghouse in all third-party NIL deals that players strike with boosters, brands, businesses will have to go through this clearinghouse, and those with boosters or any other affiliated entity, including corporate sponsors, will be handled more strictly by Deloitte, a company running the clearinghouse, and these deals could be denied. And there's an appeals process that offers athletes if these deals are denied. And all of this is a goal to put the toothpaste, you might say, back in the tube, to cut out and eliminate a lot of the phony booster deals kind of that we see now that really aren't NIL deals, but are masquerading sort of as NIL deals. The problem with this, obviously, is the toothpaste is out of the tube. So putting it back is very difficult and could lead to more legal challenges for the NCAA in the power conferences.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate your time when you give it to us. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, with us on 365 Sports. Is there anything more difficult than putting toothpaste back in the tube?
Well, you don't. It's impossible.
You would need a paper clip or something, right? That you open up the paper clip and you just kind of slow.
You can't. I mean, it's out. It's out. I mean, that's the thing. That's why that's saying it's impossible.
I know. You got to be able to do it. Nothing's impossible.
No, it's impossible. The mechanism of the toothpaste is.
He's just trying to be silly, Paul.
I know, but I'm trying.
I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with me asking a question.
No, I just think it's.
Paul answered the question.
There's not a way. The other thing about toothpaste, the tube, is that it has that ability to, when you think you have pushed it out, it brings it back in.
Yeah, but here's the thing:
suction.
Big toothpaste wants you to lose some.
Yeah,
they want there to be some excess loss that you don't get on your teeth. They want it to fall right in the sink there, because then you have to buy.
True.
Because then you have to buy more toothpaste.
Yep.
Somebody years ago said, "Listen, we're going to create a thing that's cheap and also will guarantee us that they buy toothpaste at a more frequent rate than they would otherwise."
Yeah. All right. Emery Winters running the mothership with Garrett Ross. I don't know if Emery, he has run it, but Garrett, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
And then Andrew Valade's working on those polls. We'll have another one that's up. He had one earlier today.
Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. We have a lot to get to, including, let's hear from David Teal, who covers the ACC. He's next. This is 365 Sports.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions, IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
A PGA Tour update. The PGA Championship. Cam Davis right now, 6 under par with a couple of holes to play. There have been some of the alphas that are a little bit, little wobbly. Ryan Gerard, I was watching him earlier this afternoon. It might have been before I left for the show. He got to 7 under with an eagle and then lost a couple of strokes to par. Luke Donald, Ryder Cup type captain, having a little bit of a flashback, as is Adam Scott. Let me give you some of the bigger names. By the way, Paul Hatton, 3 under. No. Rory, 3 over. Scheffler, 2 under. We'll get a little bit more of an update, but you can't take Hatton.
I'm not.
And he
ruined. I had, because of Tyrrell Hatton, I had 3 guys. I would have won the thing hands down. I had like 3 of the top 7 finishers in that tournament. And Tyrrell Hatton was like 700 over par and hit everything in the sand, the water, the woods, everything out of bounds, anything he could do to not make the cut. And he did not make the cut.
David Teal covers college athletics, cover football, ACC for the Virginia Pilot, and has been a long time legendary columnist. He joins us on 365 Sports. Hey, David, it's been a while. Thanks for your time. How you been, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm well. Hope you guys are the same.
What did you learn from the ACC meetings that perhaps was either new, intriguing, or something that we maybe don't know about?
I don't know that we learned a whole lot new, guys. I think there were a couple of takeaways. Number one, just the vibe of the 3 days at Amelia Island was dramatically different from the past 2 years when there was so much drama and so much infighting and tension. And now, since the March settlement of the Florida State, Clemson, and ACC dueling lawsuits, it's a lot more settled. I mean, nobody's holding hands and singing Kumbaya, but it was much more collegial and I think much more productive because of that. I mean, the issues were what you might expect. The impending expected House settlement, future college football playoff structure, NCAA governance, football scheduling, the Notre Dame rotation, and the new series with Clemson. So myriad issues, but I think the overall overarching takeaway was just the atmosphere.
David, I know that like a lot of it was Bill Belichick related for better or for worse for Coach Belichick. But when it came down to the issues of the automatic qualifiers and all that, do you see maybe a stronger, more resolute Jim Phillips when it comes to those things, at least publicly? Because he's one of the quiet commissioners when it comes to these things. He's not Tony Petitti, like in the background, silent over this gigantic empire, but he's not as maybe bold as Greg Sankey or Brett Yormark is when he speaks.
Agreed. Sankey and Yormark are in a different league there, and that's just their personalities. And Jim doesn't need to be anything that he's not. He's true to himself, and I think that makes him more effective. I mean, we saw it last season. He lobbied relentlessly, publicly, for SMU to get into the playoff. And whether that had any effect on the selection committee, we'll really never know. But lo and behold, the Mustangs not only made the field, but they were chosen over Alabama. And I think there were many people who thought, an ACC runner-up getting in over an SEC power such as Alabama will never happen, but it did. And in this case, he has been, in his word, steadfast from the start about opposing multiple automatic qualifiers for any conference, let alone 4 each for the Big Ten and the SEC, while relegating the ACC and Big 12 to 2 apiece. And I think their hope is to marshal enough public opinion and pressure to force Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey to back down. Whether they're successful or not remains to be seen.
That's all the power they have now, right, David? I mean, the actual decisions are in the hands now of the SEC and the Big Ten. So we were just talking to Ross Dellinger a little while ago. I was like, why are they even entertaining the ACC and the Big 12? It's what? Politics and public pressure. I mean, that's the two things that can actually possibly make a difference, but there's little else.
I think you're right. And let me throw one more possible wrinkle into this. Let's just say the SEC and the Big Ten get their way. We have seen states' attorney generals challenge the NCAA in court multiple times over the last year and a half. Let's just say here in my home state of Virginia, where UVA and Virginia Tech reside in the ACC, it would not surprise me at all if the Attorney General here challenged a college football playoff model that was so weighted toward 2 particular conferences on an antitrust basis.
David, do you think Phillips and Yormark regret giving in to the Big Ten and SEC? They may not have had a choice, but could they have been a little more stubborn? It just seems like, go down fighting, whatever. Okay, you're still going to get your butt kicked. But do you feel like they regret that a year ago?
I think they probably regret the outcome, but I don't know that they regret their efforts. I think they did all that they could. And, the numbers, the past performances and such were heavily weighted toward those two conferences. And as several ACC athletic directors have expressed to me, and this is an exact phrase, the Big Ten and the SEC were weaponizing this. In other words, either you go along with this, or we're headed elsewhere on our own. Now, could the ACC and the Big 12 have called that bluff? Perhaps, but they elected not to.
Do you think that they could maybe call it now, or is it further down the line? Like, is that the last card they would have to play if it came down to it? Is just call their bluff and dare them to?
Well, yeah, I don't know that that's even a card they could play. I think the more likely play here is public opinion, and then perhaps a legal challenge. It's going to be fascinating to watch. You mentioned you had Ross on earlier today, and I was struck by the lead to his most recent story on the subject, where a congressman from Pennsylvania expressed dismay over the prospect of this CFP model. And last I checked, Penn State is in the Big Ten. And yet here was a representative from that Commonwealth obviously opposed to this. So it'll be interesting to see, the college football industry has long pined for congressional intervention on NIL and transfers and such. May come first with the CFP.
David, when Bill Belichick arrived, was there like a bunch of clowns and elephants, like the whole circus? Was that trailing him as he entered the doors to the ACC meetings? Because, man, what a last couple of weeks, huh?
It was a little more subtle than that because number one, he was late and strolled into the general session Monday afternoon, I'd say a good 10 to 15 minutes after everyone else had entered the room. He was pulling a North Carolina roller bag, marked up just as the Tar Heels would want. And he did not have Miss Hudson in tow. So I think that contributed to the lack of elephants and circus clowns.
Have you ever seen anything like that? You've covered this sport for a long, long time. I mean, this has been kind of as unique, especially for someone who is such a control freak.
Very TMZ.
Yes.
I half wondered, guys, whether TMZ would be at spring meetings.
Yes.
I wonder if they would credential them. I would think they would, because
guys, it's an uncredentialed event.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
you may have just tipped them off.
Yeah, I may talk about Mark and Phillips regretting some things. I may regret that, but no, it's obviously a very unique story, and it's been so peculiar to watch, and really, it's a mess of North Carolina and Bill Belichick's doing. Bill Belichick could have cut this off quite easily by being more upfront about talking about, here's a concept, North Carolina football.
Yeah.
Rather than his book. And oh, by the way, how about making some of his players available to the media during the spring? You leave us with very little opportunity to talk about anything else, and then Jordan interrupts the interview, and that goes viral. And yet, still, there was this reluctance to talk about the football team.
Yeah,
and it seems, and North Carolina didn't push him on it, but now apparently they have, and he has responded. And he talked to ESPN and some local North Carolina media down in Amelia Island. And I know he's going on GMA tomorrow with Michael Strahan. So maybe things are moving in a more conventional direction.
Well, I still don't understand why they just didn't answer the question. We met on a plane, because that's the story we all knew. Like, it wasn't, it was pretty innocuous and would not have even made the final interview. Had they just, yeah, we met on a plane, like that's it. Like that was the story we all knew.
Total softball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Total softball, and they whiffed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wiffle ball almost.
Yeah.
David, I got a question for you. When you mentioned that the I hate that term alliance, because we understand that turned out to be a nightmare with what Warren did at the Big Ten. But the Big Ten and the SEC have their little powwows. They get together, flex their muscles, tell everybody how bigger, better, faster, stronger they are, and they are. Why would the ACC and Big 12 not have some sort of relationship, knowing that they're swimming uphill? Because it doesn't appear that they do, for whatever reason.
Well, they don't have any scheduling alliance, certainly. And actually, I don't know that it would interest the ACC, because the ACC has more big football brands than the Big 12. Now, do Phillips and Yormark work together on certain things? I would absolutely expect that is indeed the case, but it's more, it's less formal than the doomed and failed alliance of the past.
David, Clemson appears to be pointed in the direction that they used to be with the returning quarterback. They he experimented lightly with the transfer portal. Just a couple of puffs. He's not getting up in the morning and doing it every day, but he experimented with the transfer portal and got some good players out of it. Would a pretty big deal for the ACC, because they appear to be the brand that is best ready to compete in the playoff, that they not only get in there like they did last year, but maybe do something, and then maybe have Miami do something as well?
I think those are the two teams that you would think. Miami adding Carson Beck at quarterback, if he can return to 2023 form and that shoulder is healed. You mentioned Klubnik. He was so good against Texas in the CFP and equally impressive against SMU in the ACC championship game. Where Clemson has to get better is on the defensive side. And that's where Tom Allen comes in. That may have been as big a quote unquote portal acquisition for Dabo during the offseason as any, is squaring away Tom Allen from James Franklin at Penn State as defensive coordinator.
David, the Notre Dame series does not count as a conference game.
So says Jim Phillips.
Okay, so
I'm not sure Pete Bavacqua is of the same mind.
Well, and Pete Bavacqua might have more power than the ACC commissioner in all this at the end, right?
As I was texting with someone, Notre Dame is accustomed to getting its way all the time. And I'm presuming that Pete Bavacqua thinks that will be the case again. But I asked Jim Phillips directly yesterday, guys, do the new Notre Dame games against Clemson, 7 of the 12 are newly scheduled. 5 were already part of the rotation. Do these 7 new games count for Notre Dame's contracted 5 a year versus ACC opponents? And he said no. Whether they can hold Notre Dame to that remains to be seen. And I know there's a lot of ACC athletic directors on the edge of their seat waiting for resolution, because they need to know if they're going to lose any scheduled games against Notre Dame, because that's going to cost them money with this new viewership initiative that the ACC has with distributing television money. You want to have the best ratings. You want to have the best games. And there's no better way to do that than to play the Fighting Irish.
And How did they take that when Pete Vivacqua said, look, we want to play Clemson, Miami, and Florida State more in this rotation? Was that kind of a punch in the gut to schools? And like Boston College is kind of a rival that like they're maybe a little protected in that a little bit, maybe Pitt, I guess. But if you're Wake Forest, if you're Georgia Tech or any of the North Carolina schools like NC State, they don't like Notre Dame kind of said like, we enjoyed our trip, but like, we don't have to go back, anytime soon.
Well, I think how Notre Dame views NC State is apparent from this year's game against the Wolfpack, which is on what? Peacock. It's the one game that NBC and Notre Dame elected to move to streaming.
Yeah, elected. That in the end, it's good. I just, you know what? I don't know. I think the ACC's got something brewing. With Clemson getting a high level, FSU's been to hell and back, although they haven't been back yet, but that would help. Miami's strong. Where do you see the top part, and how many teams, in your opinion, David, are the top tier of the ACC in a legitimate? They could play in the college football playoff and maybe get pretty deep into it.
I think you're looking at Clemson, Miami, Louisville, SMU. I think those would be my top four. Not sold yet on Florida State going from 2-10 to CFP. I know Kurt Cignetti worked similar magic at Indiana last season, but it just seems like a long shot. Now, is Florida State going to be markedly better? Absolutely. And I certainly expect them to be in postseason and perhaps comfortably so. But if you ask me for a top four, those would be at Miller Moss, coming to Louisville, and Coach Brom is excellent with quarterbacks. He's proven that time and time again. Kevin Jennings back at SMU. Rhett Lashley really has that program humming, especially on the offensive side. And then, Miami needs to be better defensively. And what did they do? They went out and hired Minnesota's defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. The Golden Gophers were a top 10 defense last season. I saw them in person absolutely smother Virginia Tech in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Now, granted, it was a very compromised Virginia Tech roster because of opt-outs and injuries, but still, Minnesota throughout the season was quite good defensively. And I think Heatherman's arrival should really help the Hurricanes this season.
Who do you think is in a little bit of trouble in the league? Is Tony Elliott maybe in a little bit of trouble if this quarterback thing doesn't work out and he can't get the who's going? Virginia Tech's in a weird spot. Like, who do you see as it's tight right now?
Well, that's all the chatter here in my state, guys, is that you have two fourth-year coaches in Brent Pry and Tony Elliott. And they're coming off disappointing seasons and really disappointing starts to their tenures overall. And 4 years, it's time to produce. So we will see. It would not stun anyone if there was regime change in both places if they fail to make the postseason in 2025.
David, good stuff, man. I'm glad we reached out to you. Appreciate you having time for us today. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Gentlemen, enjoyed it. Thank you.
David Teal, the Virginia pilot, and the Daily News and more with us on 365 Sports. Around the corner, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. I've reached out to Adam Sparks, who covers Tennessee. They, of course, had the little flare-up, kind of like bubbling lava with the Nico Iamaleava story, and how have they settled in? We'll have him on a little bit after 5, Paul's Top 5, the poll results and more. And this is 365 Sports. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans.
with Joshua and Cheyenne in the Town West Shopping Center, just off of Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor. Man, they're just fantastic. Rocket Patel's my favorite brand. I do like La Fontana. And where was I the other day? Well, I saw a picture of someone smoking a cigar. It was some event. I can't remember exactly. It's got the McAuliffe, which is a Texas brand cigar. They have those inside the 48-foot walk-in humidor too. And yes, of course, Cohiba, Padron, Macanudo, Ashton, Say It, they have it. The greatest brands and cigars around the world. Plus, Vita Dreams to help you at night fall asleep. And the best part about it, it's not like you go wham, you're gone, and you don't know where you are, or you wake up and you kind of feel like you've had something in your system. Not how they work. It's really cool and very, very comfortable. And if it's a bad day, aches and pains, they have, of course, as well for bad days. It's a gummy. It's Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Valley Mills, Richland Drive, and Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Car Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, taking a look at the grab bag of stories going on around the world of sports. So let's dive in on what's going on today. And there's quite a few things, so I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of it, actually, which is a nice departure from some other days when there's not much going on outside of the schedule. But certainly a big story potentially in the NFL today worth discussing off top, and that is a new book that is coming out. Seth Wickersham making the media rounds as he has got a new book coming out called American Kings, a biography of the quarterback is what it's called. American Kings, a biography of the quarterback. And there are a lot of different things apparently that are covered in this book. It's coming out in September, so we're giving him free advertising, and he's getting a ton of it today. So we're not alone. He's getting a ton of it today, particularly because of one part of this book. Now, this book is not all about Caleb Williams. It is a detailed account of what it means to be a quarterback at various levels from high school to college to the NFL, as well as what it's like for legends in retirement. So in this book, you're going to have John Elway, which timing is not great necessarily for him, but John Elway, Johnny Unitas, Warren Moon. It's going to cover Arch Manning's recruitment, as well as other members of the Manning family, Steve Young, Kirk Cousins, Drake May. Like, it's going to have all of these different people that are involved in this book. But the part that's getting a ton of play today is the part about Caleb Williams and the story involving he and his father and their attempts, or at least their discussions, to perhaps get him out of playing for the Chicago Bears leading into the NFL draft. Carl Williams, Caleb's father, wanted, according to Wickersham, to give his son an opportunity to choose his team. And so they did not necessarily feel like Chicago was the best place for him. And Carl Williams worried, according to the story, that with their history, with the uncertainty about a new stadium, and head coach Matt Eberflus, that he wouldn't have the right support system to be able to be the player that he could be, his son Caleb. And Williams told several agents back in 2024, I don't want my son playing for the Bears. So they went into looking for ways around the collective bargaining agreement. They went and spoke with Archie Manning about how they were able to get Eli into the situation with the Giants back in 2004. He met with labor lawyers. He met with agents. They discussed whether Caleb could go to the UFL and then sign as an unrestricted free agent in 2025 and pick his own team. He also apparently had some other thoughts about like the money that gets paid the rookies based on the wage scale. Said to Wickersham, the rookie cap is just unconstitutional. Worst piece of S I've ever read. It's the worst in sports history. That sounds like a lot of hyperbole, quite frankly, and somebody who's probably not that spot on when it comes to what the deal actually is. But it goes on, and this book's obviously getting a lot of play already, and this is only the Caleb Williams part, but it goes on in the story and kind of the excerpts. But this has led to just a big to-do today about Caleb Williams and the Bears. And there is one part where Caleb Williams finally just says, like, no, I'm going to go play for the Bears. And as you can imagine, that is the part that Bears fans are focusing on the most, of like, well, not all the rest of this makes us really love him that much, but he did eventually choose us in the end and decide to come play in Chicago. He said, I can do it for this team. I'm going to go to the Bears. So he did ultimately feel like he could turn the franchise around. The Bears have had no comment, but it does dive into this story. So if you're interested in this whole saga, there's a great appetizer out there today, but there's also a ton of other stuff with that book. And I don't know if we can get Seth on the show or not, but we'll definitely hear from him in the coming months, because it's already creating a little bit of a buzz today.
I'll like Smokey, I already looked when Craig brought this up. I don't have his contact info. You might.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
We'll reach out to him. I'm also going to reach out to the publishing company and see if they'll send us one that we can share and read, because I really would like to read this book. But it's interesting, like all the links they went to. And then when Caleb spent time with the Bears, he decided, no, I'll go here. I'll take on this challenge, which I hope this doesn't wind up giving like a lot of negative light, because it shows that, like, look, they were legitimately concerned about the Bears. And the top 5 today is actually inspired by this, about NFL places QBs go to die. And it's one of them. I mean, like, really, they have
never had a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards, which doesn't mean you haven't been good.
They're one of the oldest teams in the league, correct? You know how many Hall of Fame quarterbacks they've had?
They had one.
Sid Luckman.
Yes.
Sid Luckman.
Yes.
And that's a long, long time ago. So they've had one Hall of Fame quarterback that's played for the Bears. So I understand Caleb Williams, because of the weather, because of the stadium concerns, because of all that. Like, I get, like, you'd be concerned, but he went and met with them. They assuaged his concerns, and now he's got an offensive guru as the head coach. I'm excited to see it. I'm glad that it worked out for the Bears and for Caleb this way, but it would have been interesting to see him pull a Herschel Walker and go to a different league.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was on the table. I mean, they were apparently kicking the tires on every option, with the father driving a lot of it, Carl, and they're there is a little bit of a spin on this. Like I said, the part where he eventually says, like, no, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to help turn it around. That's the part that you see on all the Bears fans' timelines of like, see, he chose us. The part that you may not see is that it wasn't all their decision, obviously. For example, apparently after the scouting combine, Caleb Williams met with Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell and then reportedly told his father that he needed to go to the Vikings. So that was one time that he said, like, hey, I'd like to go to the Vikings. But basically what I think helped probably determine it all was that Bears GM Ryan Poles said, we're drafting you no matter what. Like, they weren't going to, like, we're going to draft you no matter what you say, what you do. Like, we're drafting you. So I think that probably ultimately was the decider of, like, we have no exit ramp and they're going to take us no matter what. We're not going to be able to convince them how unhappy we'll be or how whatever. So eventually it all worked itself out. I mean, Caleb Williams is a solid player. He's not near the star that you want him to be at this point or hope he will be very soon. And I don't know how much drama this will create, but it created a lot of discussion today. And so that book's getting a lot of play. And this is, like I said, just a sliver of it, apparently, because there's a whole thing about Arch Manning's recruitment. And, you know, I rattled off all of the different current and former players that have portions of this book as well. But this is the part that got out there and really got a lot of people talking. So go win. It won't matter, but it is interesting to hear of like how much was going on behind the scenes and how much the Williams family, and if they would have had an off ramp, would they have ultimately have taken it? That remains to be seen. But yeah, that's coming out, that book later on this summer from Seth Wickersham. And a lot about Caleb Williams, including his father. That's the headline in a lot of places of Chicago is the place quarterbacks go to die. Carl Williams said that. So there you go. That's interesting stuff. Meanwhile, Deion Sanders has got a reality show. And no, I'm not talking about the one that he has had on Amazon. He has got a new reality series, a documentary series coming out on Netflix. And it is titled Prime Time. This is after 3 seasons of Coach Prime on Amazon, which was about his time at Jackson State. Netflix says the series will explore Sanders' evolution from a two-sport phenom to a culture-defining coach and media personality. Will also open up Deion to talk about his relationship with his biological father, surviving an attempted suicide, as well as his near-death health scares. And it did say in one of the write-ups that I read on this that it's unclear whether or not they're going to have draft footage, like behind the scenes while Shador's plummeting. Now, that I would watch.
Yeah.
The rest of it, I don't really care at all because I don't watch a lot of like sports documentaries in general. So I don't know how much that's really a pull for me to begin with. For others, I'm sure it is. But that part of it, if I knew that you could sit there and watch the live, or not live, but the reactions that were actually ongoing while that was all happening, I would absolutely line up to watch that part of it.
I wonder if they'll use our show in this one.
Oh, like last time?
Like the last time.
Yeah, that was so interesting, man. We just showed our voices.
It was the only reason I watched it. Then I got into it. I mean, look, he's an interesting guy. He's but I would say this to Deion, like, he's going to get a lot of money from this. Netflix has a ton of money. It's probably good exposure for the program.
Netflix is becoming like really junky though. And I don't mean because of this show. It's just like they have a ton of money, but it's, you can tell like they're just spending it on just stuff basically a lot of times.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier and I was like, we were in an era where there's like a lot more shows for you to watch, but proportionally, isn't it like, like if you had your good sitcom lineup back in the 90s, there were like 3 good sitcoms and then a bunch of trashy ones. It's probably the same.
We don't have 10 Seinfelds. We have like Seinfeld and then like 20 just shows.
Yeah,
just shows.
They're there. And, some people might like them, but like whatever. And so the sports part of Netflix is either like those Untolds are like really interesting or they tell you things that you already know.
Yeah.
Or they leave out the best parts. Urban Meyer. Sorry.
Yeah.
The most
lightning will strike you speaking about that godly godly man.
Yeah, now he's in the pyramid schemes. So I don't know. Like, he's gonna have to keep following this up with success. Not saying that he won't, but you shine up like a bright enough light, you gotta keep winning. And I think they will, but like there is a chance that like even Deion can have too much attention.
Yeah, it will also feature Jerry Rice, Emmitt Smith, Ice Cube, Kirk Franklin will all be involved to some extent. It'll premiere in 2026. It's in production right now. Dion said, it means so much to finally be able to tell my unfiltered story, my truth. I was prime time, then I dropped the time and went by prime. Now I'm in the third quarter of my life. They call me Coach Prime. Y'all knew a part of me each step of the way, but you never knew Dion, and I'm excited to share that with you all, the highs, the lows, truths, tragedies, everything in between. They can't stop or contain what God has purpose, yada, yada, yada. That was his statement. So sparing you further details, that'll be coming out next year. I'll be curious to see the footage, and that'll determine whether or not I watch. Like if they show like, hey, this is the draft reaction, then boom, I'm watching that episode. If it's just a bunch of like the Amazon series, that didn't really pull me in any way, like a lot of other shows don't. So we'll see if there's a hook for most people. But for Dion fans, of which there are plenty of them, you got another show coming out after having that Amazon series. So we know he's got an audience already, and obviously enough of an audience to go from Amazon to now having a Netflix deal. So, he's going to be in the spotlight in a different way, but we'll see how that works out for Colorado.
I didn't bring this up after the draft. I don't remember. It was so much about Shedeur and not enough about Cam Ward. But one of the things I remember Dion standing with Shedeur, and perhaps it was Shiloh and whoever, and they're watching the draft. And it was almost as if Dion thought the next pick was going to be Shedeur. He would have known that. I was surprised that he would have not known that he would know if Shedeur, they're not going to make the pick without calling the player they're going to pick. Yeah, I just thought there was a little bit of confusion on his part about how the system worked, and you would think he would have known how the system worked.
I don't think it was confusion. I think it was they were challenging the system, and the system bucked back because he does that.
No, that he would have known, like he was standing there thinking that the next pick, let's say it was New Orleans.
Well, it sounds like Hollywood to me.
Yeah.
Like making it like suspenseful, like, oh, he thinks that he's about to get picked. I don't know. I didn't see that clip. But,
I just thought that looked like he was, and I get it, but it's like he would have known that he was not going to get picked because he had not gotten the phone call.
Yeah. I think that for that particular instance, but I think overall, them trying to reinvent the process with "we ain't hard to find."
No, yeah,
that's like you gotta,
Well, buddy, that all blew up in their face in a major way, and I wasn't rooting it on, but a lot of people were, and they pushed back, and they dished it as well. So I mean, they got theirs in return, and that was, I'm sure, a really hard time. Now, as far as the details go, like I said, 2026 release date, there'll be 3 60-minute episodes. It'll be 3 hours all told. It's not going to be like a 10-episode, 30-minute, like sitcom type of thing. It'll be 3 60-minute episodes. So not going to see it for, at bare minimum, another 7 months. So you hope they'll have some Colorado football intertwined in there somewhere. But, man, he's had a lot of TV shows. You start to look like his IMDb page. He's had sitcoms and multiple reality shows, and here's another one coming down the pipeline. So we'll see if the Big 12 gets any rub off of that in some form or fashion, or if that's of interest to the Big 12 audience. But Dion, like I said, has got his own audience that he's built up, and now he's got this project as well. So moving on, one college football note, Ty Simpson named the starting quarterback at Alabama. We did not mention that. I think that came out in the last hour or so. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, though. The quarterback competitions that were still up in the air. Ty Simpson is officially the starting quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is also discussion for later. We've been talking around the buys and all this and everything about this college football playoff, and I want to discuss at some point how would that work for the Big 12, a play-in game? You just take the top two and they both get in?
No. You
take the top team and that's the conference champion, and then 2-3 play?
Yeah.
I think that's the most logical way if
that's
you only have the two spots.
Maybe there's – you don't –
I mean, in theory, you could do top four, but then, you're kind of screwing the regular season completely out of the picture. So, it would be the top team as your champ. So, last year, I believe that still would have been Arizona State, but then you would have had – I believe it would have been Iowa State and BYU playing for a play-in game. And I don't really get real jazzed up about a lot of these ideas because I'm just like, man, this is just like growing and growing. And it's just like kind of silly how much you're adding and adding and adding. But I'll tell you what, Iowa State and BYU with a spot to the college football playoff on the line would have been pretty freaking sick. Like, that would have been cool.
The problem is when you get into the leagues that have four that are also going to do this, you're going to get potentially, and like I know they don't want to like admit this, like the SEC and Big Ten be like, no, all of our teams will be 11.
Well, that's the problem with them.
Like,
yes.
yeah, they're going to be like, we're not going to admit this, but what's going to happen is that they're going to put their top 2 in, right, and then the rest of the 6.
Brother, they're going to put their top 4 in.
Yeah, but no, but like the play-in games to get the top 4, right?
Yeah, for the automatic qualifier.
Top 2
for the automatic qualifier. So the top 2 would go in the same model. Well, then you're going to have 2 other games. One that'll be 3 versus 4, which should probably be fine most years. But 5 versus 6 could be vomit versus poop.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
No, it won't
really
be 5 against 6. I don't think that. I don't. I think they're doing 3, 6, 4, 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Like, but you could get 5 and 6 in, which a lot of years could be meh.
Yeah, it could be
Like,
an 8 and 4 or 5. Yeah, no.
It could be a 7 and 5 team.
Yeah.
Like realistically,
That's why,
if you're going down to 6.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to when they were bringing that up. That's a way to make sure you fill your 4 in a certain way, but it's also a great way to make sure you may get 1 or 2 of the at-large, because if the third team in the SEC loses to 6, they're still getting in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless there's just a jam-packed a bunch of teams that are better than we think across the rest of the country, they're getting in. The third team unless they lose 40-12.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting, and something to maybe talk about later is how much fun that would be to see 2 versus 3 playing for a spot to join conference champ Arizona State in the college football playoff. And then, for example, with the SEC last year, you would have had, if I'm on the right week as far as the rankings go, Texas would have been in automatically, and they would have been, I mean, you think they would have been your SEC champ, or I'm a week early, I think.
Who's that?
I'm just doing a little exercise here. So Texas would have been they would have been your regular season SEC champ because Georgia lost 2 games, right? So it would have been Texas and Georgia with a bye, and then you would have had Tennessee playing like Missouri and Alabama playing. Or no, Tennessee would have probably played South Carolina, and then Alabama would have played Tennessee. Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss. That would have been how you would have probably broken that down. And I don't know. Sounds like a lot, but then you kind of drill down into it and you're like, that'd be kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of cool the way that you do that. So long as just whoever finishes first is the conference champion, and that still means something and matters.
Yep.
That's really what I want to be maintained somehow or another. So, yeah, I do think there is some legs to that being a pretty cool concept. If it's done right, we'll see. There's a lot still being worked out, obviously. Meanwhile, elsewhere, you got a game tonight in the NBA. Oklahoma City, Denver, as that series is getting into the nitty-gritty. Game 6, Thunder can win it tonight on the road and move on to the Western Conference Finals. But, yeah, Denver and OKC going on West semifinal, 7:30 on ESPN. So that's the lone game tonight as far as that goes. And then over in the NHL, 2 games tonight. So you got Carolina at Washington. That is a Game 5. Hurricanes looking to close it out on the road and move on into the next round as they are up 3-1 over the Capitals. That starts at 6 on the Turner Networks, TNT, True TV, etc. HBO Max.
Yeah, it changed back.
Just needs to be HBO. But whatever. It's progress. Actually, it's going backwards, but that's somehow progress, because I did see this pointed out. How many millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars were made by the person who said, let's change it to Max, only for it less than a year later to go back to what it was. But you got paid, pal.
Yeah,
you got paid for the dumb idea.
Consultants are brought in to tell you, even if they think you're doing something right, to tell you that they need to do something different.
I want to go back in time and be a consultant. It sounds like a really good gig.
We don't have to go back in time. We can
we just do that?
Do it
okay,
now.
well, shoot. Hey, who needs some consultant on your whatever?
We did a segment on
on
triple option with Pierre, where I told him, like, hey, here's how I would come in and be different than all the consultants. He's like, yeah, it would be better, because they'll come in and be like, hey, brown-haired girl, streak that,
put little like red streaks in your hair or something. And then, that didn't work out. Oh, well, go back to it. I mean, that's basically what the HBO people did. So, yeah, hats off to whoever, I guess, hustled that money out of the consultant job. But then second round tonight, Stars at the Jets, 8:30 on the Turner Network. So it's a doubleheader on TNT and all that. So Stars up 3-1, also looking to close out that series and move on to the next round in the West, they'll have to do so up north in Canada. So there you go. There's a few things off the radar.
All right. Stars close it out. I saw, I think RJ up in Dallas called him Lose-a-Peg is what he's calling him, Lose-a-Peg. And so for some reason he hates their goalie. Is he kind of a
Hellebuyck? Yeah, I mean he can be obnoxious at times.
All right. When we come back, Adam Sparks, he covers Tennessee football. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Specialty pizzas right now. Limited time, $3 off large specialty pizzas. Use the code SPECIAL3. You can go online, order it right now. You can order anything off of Marco's with their menu, whether it's pizza or wings or some sort of a sweet. And, of course, they have the sandwiches and so much more. 5 locations in Waco. Bob Mock owns all 5, has been in the pizza business forever. One of my first real jobs was when I delivered pizzas back when I was in high school and then for a year or two in college. Made pretty good money doing that. Always been intrigued by the pizza business. Marco's Pizza, the triple pepperoni magnifico. It is jammed with pepperoni on top. They have many specials. Go online, marcos.com, and they have code words for you to order. 5 locations here in the Waco area. Fastest growing pizza bread in America. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved, learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
I got to apologize on the air to Adam Sparks last week. You guys don't know this. You wouldn't be surprised, though. I set him up for a segment, and because I have a few of those moments with my mind, I've completely whiffed. He sent me a text last Thursday, I think it was. Hey, we're still going to do this. And so, yes, Adam, we are. Thank you very much for your patience and being a part of the show.
Adam, this is the first that Craig and I have heard of this. So
Oh, no. I mean, I think that same day there were two guests that I forgot. So, Adam, you were a part of a very important group of me just whiffing. Thank you very much for your time. So, obviously, it was a weird, strange, drama-filled spring in football with Nico headed to UCLA, all of that. Where is Tennessee right now with some of that has calmed down?
Yeah, some of it has. I mean, Tennessee's new quarterback just got to campus a couple of days ago. It's Joey Aguilar. Technically a UCLA transfer, but he started the last 2 years at App State. It's sort of a weird deal because Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback for last year, transferred to UCLA after sort of an NIL holdout to some extent. He goes to UCLA, which then pushed Joey Aguilar out of UCLA and over to Tennessee. So on paper, it looks sort of like a college trade. That's not the way that Tennessee would look at it. I would say if it was a trade, it's more like Tennessee lost Nico but gained back Aguilar and quite a bit of money because NIL-wise, it's not going to cost Tennessee near as much as Nico did. It was a strange situation. I mean, Nico was the poster child for NIL about 3 years ago when he signed. At that time was about an $8 million deal. He was the highest paid guy that anybody knew of in the beginning of the NIL era. And he was going into his third year, his second season as a starter, but the third year. And his Team Nico, wanted more money. And Tennessee said they wouldn't give him more money. And you had two sides sort of digging their heels into the sand until it got to a breaking point. And it's changed the trajectory of the team, I think, this year. Tennessee was a playoff team last year. There was hopes that they could be this year. Now, if you poll the fan base rather than a 9 or 10 win team, I think realistically people think they're probably more of an 8-4 team, which I think is fair.
This is also one of the strangest things when it comes to their roster here. When they start practices in the late summer, will be none of the three guys that they have at quarterback thought the day before spring football ended that they might be the starting quarterback at Tennessee this year. So that's something to rapidly have to deal with mentally, right, Adam, that they have to kind of adjust to. And I really don't know what kind of offense UCLA is running, but Joey Aguilar's got a really short runway to learn Josh Heupel and Joey Halsel's offense.
Yeah, I think this is Aguilar's fourth offense he has to learn in 28 months. Mm-hmm. He was at Diablo Valley Community College in California a couple years ago. Then he was at App State for 2 seasons. Then he was at UCLA for 4 months. And then he's had to flush all of that out and try to learn Tennessee's offense in a short time. Josh Heupel's offense is, it's pretty renowned, but it's also known to some extent. It's a version of the Art Briles offense, right, which you guys know well. It's in some ways it's simple, but in other ways there's some complexity to it that you have to go through reps in it to quite understand how to run it, because there's difference in the splits and the spacing and how a rapport is built between quarterback and receiver. And there's a whole lot that goes into that. And you just can't get that with, looking at video, looking at a digital playbook 2,000 miles away in California. So he just got to campus. Aguilar's got to speed up. Their backup, Jake Merklinger, will be a redshirt freshman. He threw like 7 or 8 passes last year as a third string behind Nico. And George McIntyre's the number 3. He was a high 4-star, low 5-star that just got here in December. So they've got, it's kind of funny. They have 2 highly touted guys who have not played. And then they've got Joey Aguilar, who's played a ton of football, but didn't even have a D1 offer coming out of high school. So you sort of have like talent and familiarity with the offense versus experience, but supposedly, at least recruiting rankings, a less talent and no familiarity with the offense. It's going to make spring pretty interesting. I didn't think I'd be paying much attention to the quarterback, in the fall camp. But that's what I'm going to be watching more than anything now.
Adam, how much did this, flip I guess, expectations on their head? I mean, what kind of an adjustment have people had to make in regards to now what they're looking forward to and what would be deemed a successful season in 2025 versus 2 months ago when it was like playoffs, baby, and anything less than that's probably a bust, right? But now kind of how has everybody come to grips on what they're expecting to see in the fall?
Well, I mean, it depends on when you ask the question. First off, I would say I didn't think they were a playoff team with Nico. I thought 9-3 was probably the ceiling, but most Tennessee fans thought they were probably a playoff team if he were here. Without him, suddenly you feel like the sky's falling. Is it 8-4? Is it 7-5? There were already some reasons to be a little concerned in the Josh Heupel era. It's been phenomenal. The trajectory has gone up and up and up, but they've stalled out at some places. The offense was not as dynamic the last 2 years after it broke every record you can imagine in his second season. Nico had not developed as much in year one as some people thought. Josh Heupel's best season and his most success came with Jeremy Pruitt's players that he inherited. All those guys are gone now. And so this was sort of a fork in the road season. And now it just sort of takes on a little different tenor. I would say, one thing, when Nico left, there was sort of a PR battle of who was going to be blamed for all this. And initially, Josh Heupel certainly won the press conference. A lot of people in the fan base, I'd say 99%, applauded Tennessee and Josh Heupel for not giving in to the demands of money. Nico wanted somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million. He was going to make about $2.5 million. Some people thought he was overpaid for how he played last year. Josh Heupel won the press conference, but winning the press conference in April doesn't win you points in October, November. People forget pretty quickly. So he's not going to get a pass on this season necessarily, but there will be a little bit of grace.
I was going to ask you that. And so now that the dust is settled, what is the minimum requirement? They're not going to fire Heupel. He's good. I'm not suggesting that, but what is the minimum requirement? You kind of threw out some possible records. We've all kind of thrown them out too.
Yeah, I mean, if they're 8-4, he'll get a pass this year. But here's the thing: is Tennessee's schedule is one of the weaker SEC schedules. It's a hard schedule to get to 10-2. It should be an easy schedule to get to 8-4. They can lose to Georgia, Alabama, at Florida, and even lose at home to Oklahoma. They can lose those four, and then to go 8-4, they have to beat Kentucky, Mississippi State, Arkansas. Vanderbilt. It drops off a cliff after those first 3 or 4. And so it's a very manageable schedule. I think if he were to go 8-4, there'd be a little hemming and hawing, but people would be okay with it. There's just a lot of small narratives that I think Josh Heupel's got to get over. One is he's got to win with his own players, not just Jeremy Pruitt players. I mentioned that. He's got to do well with these next batch of quarterbacks. Now, Aguilar, he's getting at the last minute, so people can understand that. But, his best quarterback to date is Hendon Hooker, who is a Heisman candidate. He inherited that quarterback. Nico, he brought in as sort of a 1A and 1B to Arch Manning as the top 5-star that year, and it didn't pan out completely. They went to the playoff last year, but it didn't pan out long term. And now he has 2 high 4-stars that are here now. Are they ready? Are they ready to play? Can he develop them? And then he's got maybe the best quarterback in the country coming in next year if they can keep that commitment, a guy named Faison Brandon. So he's got to, he can't sit still. That he's got to keep on trucking forward. And this is one of those seasons where he can't afford to fall back, even though he's got the bad quarterback situation.
You mentioned, winning the press conference and all that. Like, one of the things that, kind of was in the rumor mill was that the Iamaleava family wasn't happy with how aggressive they were in the portal and replacing offensive linemen, and Dylan Sampson, who is I don't think anybody in Knoxville is going to argue that's the biggest loss of the team this past year, even maybe over James Pierce, because Dylan Sampson was so good for them. a year ago. Why did he not get heavy in the portal? Did he just not like it, or is he that confident in what he's recruited?
The spring portal, they didn't like their options, but that's too late to go get what you need. I think they messed up by not getting a premier wide receiver in the winter portal. I think that's a fair criticism. Now, I don't think that was there was always a little bit of angst with the Nico camp about getting him more help, about tweaking the offense to match his skill set. They'd actually tweaked the offense in spring practice for Nico, and then Nico left, so that didn't work out quite well for him. But it's a fair criticism. I don't think it wasn't the number one criticism of Team Nico. It was about money. But they wanted more help at wide receiver. It's funny, in the NIL era, different schools, different teams have different ways of approaching this. Some coaches are aggressive in the portal. Lane Kiffin's one of those. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I think Josh Heupel sometimes is cautious, maybe too cautious. He tries to keep the guys that he has. He's big on retention. I want to keep my guys, so therefore I may not be as aggressive to go get what could be the replacements. So, he has a 5-star wide receiver that barely played last year. He has another high 4-star receiver that barely played. He just brought in some really good freshmen. He doesn't want to scare them off. I think it's fair to say Josh Heupel is always a little cautious to bring in a high-priced guy at a specific position because he's afraid that may send a guy that he already has into the portal. Not sure if that's the right tact, but I think sometimes he's a little too cautious with that. And it probably hurt him because there was a lot of good wide receivers in the portal back in the winter, and they didn't go get any of those. And that's still a problem now because they have not solved that. They have 7 wide receivers on scholarship for the 2025 season. One of them has played significant snaps. 2 of them barely played last year. 4 of the 7 have never played in a college game. And that could be a problem.
This is not quite the same, but it reminds me of after Dave Aranda and Baylor were 12-2 and beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, and they were very, very quiet in the portal. And his philosophy, he admitted it, that he wanted those who had been a part of the team that experienced it to grow grow through the old-fashioned depth chart. And it burned him because they were terrible the next year. Well, they ended up being 6-7. But that was a chance for them to take advantage. They were hot. They ranked 5th in the country at the end of the year. That reminds me of what Heupel might be doing.
Yeah, I think the more they get into this, I think some self-scout of things for Tennessee would be that sometimes I think Josh Heupel and his staff, how they develop players is the opposite of how Tennessee handles NIL and paying players. What I mean by that is they sort of like to pay rookies a lot. They like to pay rookies. They like to pay freshmen. They like to pay high school recruits pretty well to get them. But that's the NIL strategy. But then the coaching staff sometimes is a little hesitant about playing young players. So what you get, they like veterans, but they don't necessarily pay for veterans in the portal. So what you get are a lot of young players, especially freshmen, making a good deal of money that are standing on the sideline and waiting their turn. And that just, you can be one or you can be the other. Again, Lane Kiffin goes and gets guys in the portal and just plays them and doesn't care about keeping his guys. Other teams, Ohio State certainly did it last year. Texas, to some extent, has. They go and they recruit well, but then they play them early. And I think you've got to do all of one or all of the other. And I think sometimes Tennessee doesn't match those two up quite as well.
Adam, a couple weeks ago, I rolled through Knoxville on my way to Gatlinburg. And one of the things I noticed I wanted to ask you about is around the athletic complexes, all the streets are named after athletes. Todd Helton, right by baseball, Peyton Manning, Pat Summitt. Is there anyone that has not had a street named after them that you think should in Knoxville?
Boy, T. Martin's got one. He was the quarterback on the national title team. Peyton does. Phil Fulmer does. I don't think Candace Parker does. I would say Candace Parker. Now, I'll show. I grew up in the state of Tennessee. I'm going to show my generation and age, some here, but Allen Houston was a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Back in the early 90s. But you know, Tennessee's better in basketball now than they were back then. So that I don't think there's going to be a Dalton Connect highway anytime soon. I don't think Candace has one. I would say Candace Parker.
One of the ones when I looked at the front, it was Reggie White. Why is it Reggie White should have one, right?
Oh, yeah. My goodness, I think you're right. Reggie's got a number of connections around here, but yeah, he doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Tennessee, I tell you what, I know a lot of schools have this, or some schools do, but it was a pretty good recruiting tool that Tennessee, this was a few years ago. It's a little different display now, but they would bring recruits in and they would have their NFL stuff hanging up, and they would have, for the NFL, they would have 1980s, 90s Reggie White, and then 2000s Peyton Manning, and then 2000 teens Eric Berry. And they would have sort of those three guys, and to show each decade. That's two of maybe the best all time at their position. And then Eric Berry's pretty good too. Reggie White is, I'm going to have to look into that now that you say it, because I hope I'm not wrong, but I don't recall driving down Reggie White Way. It should be there though, if it's not.
Yeah, I saw T Martin, I saw a lot of those, but like, I was, because you drive past the stadium, it's Fulmer and, all that. And then I saw Reggie White in the front, and I was like, well, I would have put that one there for sure. I mean, maybe the best defensive end of all time. So
it's a good problem to have that many names. That's
true.
Adam, good stuff, man. Thank you. I appreciate we finally got you on. We'll have you again, hopefully in the future as we get close to August or into that time period. Have a great have a great summer. Thanks for your time.
All right, guys. Good to be on.
Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel, with us on 365 Sports. I admitted on the air, you guys didn't have to search that out, that I skipped him.
Oh, you did?
Twice.
Well, I mean, not last week you didn't.
Yeah, it was last week.
No, I mean, like, you didn't admit it to us last week. This is the first time.
I don't think I ever admitted that. I just absolutely whiffed on remembering. I got a text from him. Are we doing this? It was too late in the show.
Would you like me to Google some homes that are nice, like higher end? They have good soup.
Yes. No, I mean I'll take the soup.
That's what here's the thing. I don't want to get us pushed to a point where all the good spots are taken and we have to put you in one of these like low rent assisted living facilities.
I'm not going to accept that. I'm on Medicare, man. I get all sorts of stuff.
Craig probably doesn't care, but I do. I mean, it's more on him.
Let me know when you do that so I can start to collect my Social Security, which I'm going to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll call Jennifer and I'll say, like, look,
I don't want to have to start collecting my Social Security for about another year. So let's not do that. But give me another year.
I just want to make sure that you get a nice place and we don't have to put you in one that's
going to have a big, nice flat screen, wet bar, things like that.
Yeah. There's some you go into that smell like apple juice and pee. And I don't want that.
No, I don't want that either. When we come back, what do we have next?
Dealer's choice. You could do the Michigan State schedule or the top future non-con games.
What do you want to do, Craig? Paul, you guys decide amongst yourselves.
I would say let's do the Michigan State schedule.
Craig, are you ready for Michigan State? We will do the Michigan State Spartans, because if we don't, it might be another 3 or 4 days because I'm not good about keeping track of them. The Spartans are next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. I almost went by there today. I played golf earlier this morning. I almost went by there to get myself a couple of ribeyes, and I love the way they cut the ribeyes, whether it's a bone-in ribeye or one that's not. They just know the exact thickness of what I want, and it's absolutely delicious. Select, choice, or prime, whatever steak you want. Right now, the select, choice, or prime beef fillets from $15.90, $25.90, and $33.65 each. Bacon or a pound. Bacon ends in pieces, $1.50 a pound. Chicken wings of all of the piece of chicken, any of it. I love the chicken wings. I like them separate. That's the what I want. And then top sirloin steak, great for fajitas. Paxton, the other day, we were talking about that in the chat room. Sirloin steak at $10.50 a pound. And fresh salmon, the fillets they have are just something delicious at $12.25 per pound. They have knickknacks and they have snacks. They have canned goods and more. Pasta and bread, fresh baked kolaches and bread every single day with the bakery. Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family on Lake Erie Drive in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy, last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We started this, Craig's idea to go down team for team in the major conferences. We started with the Big 12, got through that. We eventually got through the ACC. And now 3 months later, we're still working on the Big 10. Most of the delays have been my fault. Craig Smoak, we're talking Spartans and Michigan State.
Yeah, talking Michigan State, just taking a look at their schedule for 2025. Got Jonathan Smith back at the helm, Aiden Childs back at quarterback, and a lot of promise compared to, I think, this time a year ago. But how does the schedule play out for them? And obviously, they're not an exact science here, but you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what it seems facing based on the on-paper exercise that we're doing here. So last year, not a lot to write home about. 5-7 overall. Did get close to making a bowl game there in year number 1, but finished 3-6 in the Big Ten. But that chance to make a bowl game there at the end, instead, a blowout loss at home to Rutgers to end the season. That's the last time we saw Sparty, was finishing 5-7 and walking away from their home field with the pretty bad whooping on their hands. So now, what does it look like in 2025 with their schedule? Things will start off for Michigan State coming up on, August the 30th. Is when their season kicks off, as they will take on Western Michigan at home. Should be a win there in game number 1. September the 6th, they get Boston College and a little Big Ten ACC action there. September 13th, you will close out the non-conference schedule with the Youngstown State. And then get into Big Ten play the following week, but not a lot to write home about in that non-conference schedule. I mean, Western Michigan should be a win. Youngstown State should be a win. Boston College, I guess we'll see ultimately, but they don't have Castellanos at quarterback anymore. So I don't know. I think Michigan State could muster out a 3-0 start without too much stress. So that's probably, I would think, the expectation up there in East Lansing. But we'll see. That BC game could go the other way. But you definitely feel confident starting off at least at 2-1. So then September 20th, get into conference play, and you'll open things up on the road at USC. And that is then when they will turn around the following week and get their first bye on September the 27th. So 4 games to open up the year. First 3 all at home, Western Michigan, Boston College, Youngstown State. And then their first road trip will also be their first Big Ten game as they go to L.A. to take on Lincoln Riley and the Trojans.
Yeah, this is, you said it should be at least 2-1 in the first 3. Not sure, Boston College will be interesting to see Bill O'Brien in year 2, and we talked about them back in the ACC. But at USC, USC is probably a little bit ahead of them, obviously, but this will be a really interesting one to see how both those teams respond that day and where they are. Especially, with the way that the USC has been really aggressive lately. So I think you'd be comfortable if you're Jonathan Smith and 2-2, but probably I would think they've got a great shot to be 3-1 out of that first 4.
I think 3-1 is a minimum requirement. Obviously, at USC, we think they're better. We think they're a lot better, but with him getting another year under his belt and kind of being able to build his own roster, I think 3-1. I know Boston College is a good football program, but on and off, I think 3-1 is a minimum standard.
So they will come back after the bye week in October the 4th. They are at Nebraska, so trip to Lincoln. It'll be followed by a home game against UCLA. Then go to Indiana on October the 18th, Michigan at home on October the 25th, and then they close out their second stretch of the 2025 schedule before they get that second and final bye week. They will play at Minnesota. So that second frame at Nebraska, UCLA at home, at Indiana, Michigan at home, at Minnesota, and at Nebraska. I mean, that's not impossible. I just watched Nebraska lose at home to Illinois last year in person. So that's not something they can't not do. UCLA, I don't have high hopes, Nico or not, for them this year. It just feels like dysfunctional as all get out, and I don't know that all the pieces fit together just yet. Indiana, that'll be tough. Michigan, that'll be tough. At Minnesota. This is a stretch where you're going to, I think, kind of set yourself up. How many games do we need to win, if any, to make a bowl game in these final 3 when we get back from our second bye week? I think they should be in good shape after the first frame, obviously. Can they get 2 or 3 wins here and then already be bowl eligible before they even hit that second bye week? That would be the dream. But definitely some games you think they're going to eat some losses, like Michigan, for example. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
5-7 last year. They don't have too much room for error. He's got to get them in the bowl.
No, it's especially with Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, all in a 6-week period, kind of there with the bye week. So the back part of the schedule is really, really tough. And you gotta, if they lose that Nebraska game.
Excuse me?
If they lose that Nebraska game, when they lose that Nebraska game, I'm sorry.
Right.
When they lose that Nebraska game, especially if they've just taken a loss to USC, that's going to put them on a path where you better hope Indiana looks like Indiana again. You better hope Michigan isn't as good as isn't better than last year.
Yeah, I'm just assuming Indiana's going to be good now. They should be.
No,
but,
I agree, Greg.
They're not going to be a playoff team, probably.
I think Cignetti has proven that when he wins, then he wins consistently.
Google him. I said.
Yes, so that's exactly right.
But then you've got Penn State and Iowa back-to-back. We haven't gotten to that part, but this is tough. You better come through and win a couple that you maybe are not favored in. Otherwise, you're going to be 5-7 again.
So they come back from that bye week. We'll see where they are, if they have 6 wins or not already, or if they need 1 or 2 in the final 3. But November 15th, the work cut out for them, get Penn State, although that game is at home in East Lansing. Then November 22nd at Iowa, which is no gimme either. And then the team that I talked about earlier that seem to forget about quite often is November 29th, a home game against Maryland. So Penn State and Maryland at home with a trip to Iowa sandwiched in between is how their final 3 games will play out following that last bye week. So 7 home games, 5 on the road, which seems like everybody's got that set up, even though I know that's not the case, but it feels that way. And then you've got, for example, no Ohio State, no Wisconsin on this schedule either, no Illinois on this schedule. So those are just some of the teams they will miss out on that may be to their benefit, but they do get Michigan, they do get Penn State, they do get Indiana, which quite honestly, I have to say them before I say USC or Nebraska.
I agree.
So, I mean, that's just being fair.
I mean,
actually,
you're mean as hell, but I agree with you.
I think I'd put Iowa above them as well,
Yep.
especially on the road in Iowa City. So, yeah, let's see. 2-0, you're gonna give them that Boston. I'll give them the Boston College game. The 3. I think they can make a bowl game. I think that's very realistic. I think that's definitely manageable with the schedule, but I do think it could be kind of cutting it close, especially if you were to stumble against BC early on in like week 2. Then you're kind of maybe digging a little bit of a hole. But I don't know. I could definitely see them getting bowl eligible. That should be bare minimum the expectation. So there you go. Like I said, no Buckeyes, no Illini, no Badgers. And then other teams like Northwestern, for example, not on the schedule either, but still pretty salty, not bad, and some fun games for the home fans. You get Michigan and Penn State both at home this year, so if you're buying season tickets, that's got to be a plus for you. And then the road games, get some fun spots. Get to go out to L.A., although not the nicer part of L.A., like when you go to UCLA. You get to go to USC instead, Nebraska, Indiana, etc. So there you go. There's Sparty for 2025.
Have you all ever stared? No, yeah, I
have.
Have you ever? Have you ever? I know Emory has been. Have you ever stared at just the Big Ten standings?
No.
How in the hell? It's like hard to just put your hands around the 18 teams. I mean, you could get into a slide and you may never get back from like the bottom 4.
We'll
I don't
see.
care
They
who
don't
you
play. Now I'm staring like everybody does,
Staring,
right? At the
yeah,
Big
like-
Ten standings,
Yeah.
because we all do that from time to time. Purdue's another team they don't play this year. Northwestern I mentioned. Wisconsin I mentioned. They don't play Washington. They don't play Rutgers.
Well, I mean, they're not going to play
No play Illinois.
9 teams.
Don't
yeah.
play Oregon. So they do miss out on a couple of the bigger names, like Oregon, for example, and who was the other one I mentioned? Wisconsin, yeah. So, yeah, there you go.
All right, so real quickly, when we break, come back with the top 5. Of the teams that made a bowl game last year, did they play Oregon? No. Indiana, yes. Penn State, yes. Ohio State, no. That's 2 for 2. Illinois, no. Iowa, Michigan, and Minnesota, right? All of them, they all made a bowl game. So did USC, and so did Nebraska.
Yeah.
Damn. All right, and Rutgers, is Rutgers on there? I didn't see it. I don't know. Rutgers was a bowl
No,
team.
Rutgers wasn't on
Okay.
there.
When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5, and Andrew Valade and his polls, the results. This is 365 Sports.
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com. Founded in 1910, Samsonite is the world leader in durable, high-quality luggage and travel accessories. Made to the highest standards, our products won't let you down. We give you the confidence to get out there and explore. Inspired by the past, devoted to the present, and built to inspire a multi-generational future, Samsonite is here to elevate your journey. Travel with Samsonite and pack confidence every step of the way. Shop now at shop.samsonite.com. Samsonite.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. On the heels of Seth Wickersham publishing a book, which I'm sure you've heard about because Caleb Williams in it very candidly discusses his, pre-draft lead up in 2024 of maybe trying to avoid the Bears. His father even going so far as to asking his agents if he could sign with a UFL team and circumvent the draft process so that Caleb could pick his employer the next year, which is wild. It didn't happen. Caleb Williams went to the Bears after going there and kind of, seeing something in the organization. Obviously, they've changed coaches already and brought in Ben Johnson. But I thought I would go through today in the top 5, brought to you by Flag and Anthem, Paul Catalina's top 5 places QBs go to die in the NFL. So let's dive into it. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins. Look, 2 Hall of Famers in their history, Bob Greasy and Dan Marino. That's unquestioned. But Dan Marino retired in the early 90s or the mid-90s. Either way, it was the freaking 90s. And since then, they've had guys like Jay Fiedler and David Garrard and a cast of thousands leading up to Tua Tagovailoa right now. And it's been a sad, sad franchise for a very long time now, and a place that players actually want to go. Players love to go play for the Dolphins. They just don't win, and mostly because they've not really answered the quarterback question, and that is what's hanging over Tua right now. Number 4, the Detroit Lions. Finally, they have a coach who believes in the organization, who believes that you can win if you do the right things in Dan Campbell, and believes so much in Jared Goff that Jared Goff got them to the NFC Championship game. People thought Detroit was almost a lock for the Super Bowl a year ago. And again, probably going to be good again, resuscitated that career. But before Jared Goff and the trade they made that sent Matthew Stafford off to win a freaking Super Bowl, for crying out loud, it was Joey Harrington and Charlie Batch and Scott Mitchell. And we love Scott Mitchell. He's on the show all the time. But they never had a consistent quarterback through the years. Eric Kramer, go on and on and on and on. It was a nightmare, a desert. Joey Harrington, the second pick in the draft. Huge bust. Huge bust in Detroit. And everybody thought going into the draft, this guy can't miss. Well, he can miss in Detroit. But they finally have good people running the organization. And now one of the more admired franchises the last couple of years. Number 3, the New Orleans Saints. Should I have put Archie Manning on here? Probably. Now, it wasn't his fault that the Saints were bad when he played there. He was actually the bright spot. But this is Bobby Hebert. Just any excuse to get Bobby Hebert on this, I just thought was good. But the Saints have one great quarterback in their history. That's Drew Brees. He won in the Super Bowl. After that, it's a cavalcade of, that guy? Really? For how long? I'll throw a name back for you. John Fourcade was in a battle with Bobby Hebert for the starting job. Yeah, it's been wild in the Saints when it comes to quarterbacking. And now with Derek Carr retiring out of the blue, they're stuck with second-round pick Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Haener this year on the roster. So who knows what's going to happen to the Saints in their quarterback position. They better hope that the 40th pick in the draft, Tyler Shuck, works out for them, or they're in for at least one more year of the same quarterback mediocrity or even worse. Number 2, the Bears are number 2. And this is what I can say about the Bears that I actually can't say about the number 1 team, but I'll get to that in a second. But the number 1 team is just so bad at it, and I think you'll probably know who I'm talking about. But look, here's Justin Fields, first-round draft pick, already on his 3rd team. Jay Cutler was probably their best one of the last 20 years. And, Rex Grossman led them to the Super Bowl, but really, did Rex Grossman lead them to the Super Bowl, or did the best defense in the league and Lovie Smith lead them to the Super Bowl? Not to mention just the Cade McNowns and all of the bad quarterbacks. And this is the team that Caleb Williams was scared to go to. Part of it is that it's very windy in Chicago. Chicago and our number 1 team have the same problem. The weather's really cold. They've got lake effect snow. All these things happen, which make it hard on quarterbacks to do it. The organization, not really all that well run overall, although it is a storied franchise.
But Caleb Williams could turn that around. We'll see if Ben Johnson can do in Chicago what he helped do in Detroit. But the Bears' quarterback history is abysmal. Abysmal. From the about 1960 on, they have like little tiny bright spots of a season or two. You know, the Jim McMahon and the 85 Bears, or, you know, Jay Cutler's nice little run, or Rex Grossman had one good year when they went to the Super Bowl and lost, by the way. But other than that, really not much hope when it comes to the Bears and quarterbacks. And number one, the Cleveland Browns. You see it, the famous jersey, which has run out of space here and can keep going on. But now you throw Deshaun Watson on that list. You throw Jameis Winston on that list. You throw a lot of other people on the, you know, Joe Flacco's on the list. Dylan Gabriel, Shadur Sanders might wind up on the list. Kenny Pickett might wind up on the list. This franchise has been so bad at quarterbacking. As a matter of fact, they really only have two quarterbacks of note in their history. A really good 4 to 5 year period with Bernie Kosar in the mid to late 80s, and Otto Graham. And if you know who Otto Graham is, you are probably on Social Security right now. If you don't know who Otto Graham is, you are the three guys I'm talking to in the studio right now. They don't know who Otto Graham is. He was the quarterback back in the 50s and 60s and helped Cleveland win NFL titles. That's when they were not a joke. I don't know if you guys can believe it out there, but there was a time in America where the Cleveland Browns were not a joke. Unreal, right? You also used to be able to smoke on airplanes at that time. Wild. But the Browns, you know, it's just, I know you're going to get excited because you're going to make a lot of money, right? You're going to make a lot of money when you get drafted. But when it's like, when the Cleveland Browns select this quarterback, you're like, crap. I've got to join this legacy, because the organization never really had a good owner. Really doesn't right now in Jimmy Haslam. In fact, one of the more, I'll politely call him erratic owners in the league. So, number one, obviously, the Cleveland Browns. And if you know who Otto Graham was when I was talking about him, please make sure you take your medicine before you go to bed. This has been the top 5. The polls are coming up right now.
Otto Graham wore a big number.
00.
Yeah, I thought even at one point he was in the 60s.
Maybe.
But,
let me look up Otto Graham.
Go to images. But the Otto Graham, man, unbelievable.
I only know about him because, I mean, I know, but say it was 60, 14, but he wore 60. Yeah. My Uncle Larry was a huge Otto Graham fan back in the days before there was a Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, yeah.
When he was a little Air Force brat, they're listening to games.
And they were good.
Yeah.
Otto Graham, the Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the Bears and the Browns are similar in that they each have one Hall of Fame quarterback, and it was
a long time
ago.
Yeah. Luckman and
you
Otto
could still
Graham.
smoke on airplanes.
Yes. Or on the sideline.
Yeah.
All right. Andrew Valet with a couple of the polls, the results. I did vote in both. And with 100 days until kickoff, which college football storyline has you most fired up for the season? I think that these are the top. I voted for the transfer portal impact. Season schedule 44. Everybody knows pretty much that. Transfer portal impact 42%. And then the others just got a little nibble. Top recruiting classes and coaching changes. 102 votes. The next poll. Should Pete Rose be inducted into the Hall of Fame now that his ban has or is lifted? 72%, not surprised that everybody would say yes, he earned it. 20% nope, gambling is still counts. And then the others undecided, and then let history decide, 92 votes. Paul, Craig, yes or no?
I'll say yes. I just want it to be over.
I think he's definitely surefire Hall of Fame or first ballot for not very good people. But I think you don't take all that into account, right? Because he had some other messy stories that don't get talked about and looped in. But those don't count, right? So if those don't count, then he should probably be in. Although it's just weird. It's just a totally different look on gambling. So I think his play earned it. Despite that, I'm tired of not budging on that at this point. What the hell? Let him in the Hall of Fame.
In the NFL, he would be in, right? Or would that gambling issue have affected him? Because John McClain has said, you vote for the player Straight up. You don't look at anything else off the
gambling
field.
issue would have still been, he would have been betting on his team, so
Yeah,
that would still apply.
But they haven't banned anybody for life for that.
Yeah, Alex
Or, I mean,
Karras
like,
back
Have
in
they
the
had
day.
anybody to
Paul
try and
Hornady.
ban for life for that?
Yeah, they had a couple of guys in the 60s.
Well, but the other thing is, Pete Rose was the canary in the coal mine for maybe a lot of different professional athletes of like, well, maybe I just wait.
That's why it's so stupid when you see there's still college athletes getting busted for betting on like FanDuel app or whatever. It's like, did you not see the Iowa State story? Did they not teach you that when you enrolled? Like, you think that'd be part of the freshman classes was like, hey, by the way, don't bet, but you still see that happening from time to time.
Even more at Iowa State, I think, have been kind of caught up a little bit in that. All right, thank you very much. Emery Winter working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Andrew Valade, the silent assassin, King Jiu-Jitsu, and what he does with the poll results and all of what he puts up on basically all platforms. Garrett Ross, great, has a Stars T-shirt on. Go Stars tonight. Craig, thank you. Paul, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to you who watch us and view us. We appreciate your time. I'm David Smoak. Good night, 365 Sports.